And here we are, the last time, the last chance, not the last qualifier, but the last place that people can get points and make their way to our grand final of RoyaleMSTRS Classic Style. Hello and welcome. I'm Rich Slayton, that's Andrew Guy, and we are here for one of our favorite formats in all of Clash Royale, competitive RoyaleMSTRS that puts a little twist on that duel mode, Andrew, to bring us a really fun, exciting, and occasional best of 5 in duel mode.
That's right. The opportunity for a actually competitive best of 5 in duel format. Also, nice shirt. You look better than I do today.
I got much appreciate it.
Whatever. Let's bring up the graphic here, Tasty. Let's get into the format of this tournament. All you guys might be going, why do Andrew and Rich love RoyaleMSTRS so much? Well, he talked about it right there. We have a whole month of qualifiers, right? We have 3 open qualifiers. We are in the 3rd one right now. Clown and Mo already won 1 each. Then we got our last chance qualifier. More on that, but how does it work? It's 2 days. It goes all day during that day 1. That Swiss group, you got 10 rounds. Day 2 is where we are here today. 16 players in the RoyaleMSTRS duel format. Wildcard Open will be happening next weekend, just in case you weren't able to make it through. As you can see right there, the top 6 in points from the first 3 weeks will be in our playoffs. But if you still want to make it, you do have the opportunity to get into that with our last chance qualifier. And then when we get to playoffs, Rich, then we have our double elimination bracket, because today it is all single elimination. But like you said, a little bit of a twist on duels format. People always asking in the chat. We're going to break it down then, but let's break it down right now.
Yes, let's be very clear here. This is a different kind of duel than you're used to. Regular Clash Royale League-style duels, if you play a deck, no matter what happens, you can't play those 8 cards for the rest of the match. But let's take a look at the RoyaleMSTRS duel format, which is just a little bit different because you only lose cards if you win with that deck. So if you play 2.6 in game 1, you shouldn't do that. But if for some reason you did and you win, no hog, no cannon, no muskie, things like that. But if you lose, all those cards are still available for you in Game 2, Game 3, and in our later rounds, Game 4 and Game 5 if necessary. So again, you only lose the use of cards that you win with, which, Andrew, allows for some really great opportunities for comebacks, especially in those best of 5s. If you're down 2, your opponent has 16 cards they can't play, you still have the whole collection of Clash Royale cards to play with. That's a pretty nice advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see these players, even in their best of 3s, but definitely in the best of 5s, really kind of soft loading. Is that a term? I don't know. Soft loading the first 2 decks they come out with. Maybe they're using different spells. Maybe it's more arrows, more snowballs, less of the big spells that you might need later on, or maybe something like Rocket in game 1, because you got to have that Fireball or Poison later on to not leave yourself too available. Whatever, we'll figure out what they're going to do with that in a little bit, but that's what we love about RoyaleMSTRS duel format, so we'll refresh you guys on that throughout the day. But also, we're here for a lot of money. There's $30K on the line in our playoffs, $6,000 every single time we do one of these qualifiers. I believe first place takes away $2,400, so it's still a really nice prize purse. And as we've talked about many times, Rich, this is such a great opportunity, just like, you know, the Snapdragon Pro Series was, to get ready for World Finals, or if you just barely missed it. I mean, we talked about Clown already. He barely missed it. Someone like that already setting a precedent for 2024, which I always love. You either got to have momentum going into the next year or momentum going into the biggest competition of the year in Finland in just about a month away, which is really exciting. And of course, we got a stacked bracket. I know that there's some stuff going on behind the scenes right now, but a lot of great players in there. We got a couple world champions. We got Mo Light, we got Clown, we got Reuben, we have Sandbox, who was at World Finals last year. Assaf, who actually, Rich, we could take a quick aside since we have time right now. Assaf, this is one of the first times I've even seen him in a high-level competition this year. I think you maybe have seen him 1 or 2 other times. That's correct, right?
He's had a couple of good performances, but of course the drill player has gotten to some later stages and then fallen a bit short, so we'll see if that deck pool can deepen here. And as you talk about it, you know, one player I do want to call out here who's on a nice run is Sub, who beat Mohamed Light in the first round of the Snapdragon Pro Series just a couple of days ago, and then now is back here again, and they are on the same side of the bracket. So it's very possible if they both get a couple of wins early on, actually I think just 1 win early on, they could be in the 2nd round going face-to-face again, and you know that Mohamed Light would like some revenge on Sub from that early knockout.
Yeah, it looks like we do have the duels format, so let's throw that up just to give you guys a little bit of a visual to go along with what we were saying. So this is exactly what Rich broke down. As you can see right there, player 1, he wins. He can no longer use any of those cards in the next game, but player 2 at the bottom of your screen, he can repeat that deck over and over and over as long as he doesn't win with it. So hopefully for him, he's able to win in game 2, and then they push it to a game 3. We already talked about the money, but maybe you guys want to see what it looks like. If not, we're going to show it to you guys all throughout the day. And, oh, but Tasty's like, well, who doesn't want to see the money? So here's the money, Rich. 2,400, and the points. That is the big thing today, man, is the points.
And that is absolutely huge. Keep in mind, folks, that this is the qualifier stage. So while we do have this $6,000 prize pool for this qualifier overall, these players are playing for points to get into the grand final, where the biggest piece of that 30,000 prize pool will be available. And we have a few players who are at the top of the leaderboard right now, but a few players who are in here today trying to hunt for those points. And right now, just to make the top 6 and move on to that next stage, you need a minimum of 10 points. So if you win here today, you could jump into that top 6 with those 15 points and have a road through to our finals. Let's look at those standings and check out where players are right now and who's in the hunt to try to make it to that overall final stage. And here we go, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, Muhammad Light, no surprises. It feels like it's been years now. We've just been saying that, all the way up in the lead with 27, and then it's a lot closer as we get from 2 to 8. 15, 12, 2 at 10, 2 at 8, and 9 more players at 6. As you can see, Clown winning week 1, Mo winning week 2, but Mo also got second place in week 1, and he's still on a roll right now. I believe he went 10-0 yesterday. I know there was a handful of players that went 10-0. And talking about our players, let's take a look here at our bracket, because we did give you an introduction to some people out there. There's a lot more. There's other great players out there that I haven't seen compete in a long time. We're going to start with Mo and Lego in our round of 16. For you guys that are new to Royale Masters, we only show one match of our round of 16. Then moving throughout the day, we show every other match available, just to cut this broadcast down a little bit for you guys. We know it's Sunday. We know you got stuff to do. But as you can see right there, Mo and Lego in the top left, Sub right below it, like you were talking about, Rich. We were into Sandbox, Inthrill not at World Finals this year, but still making a name for himself. Assaf and Adrian Piedra, that'll be a lot of fun. Clown, our week 1 winner, going up against Friend, someone that looked like they had never really done this before, but they had great success. Then we have Mr. Awesome Tatone, Reuben, Ta, Aaza, and Kurum. So, you know, Rich, there's like a handful of people that are kind of newer to the scene. I'd say Aaza, Kurum, and Friend, and maybe Mr. Awesome. But other than that, we have a pretty stacked lineup here.
We do, and I want to just call out that when you look through that bracket, there's a few players who are currently in those top 6 spots who are not here today, who didn't make it to this stage. So we're looking at guys like Sandbox, Sandbox is here today, but Arden Toas, not here in this one today, and Adnan as well. So those that 5 and 6 spot, they both have 10 points, but those spots are very much up for grabs. So you have a lot of players who will be looking to steal those last couple of spots and make their way into our grand final.
So now we've talked so much about our grand final and so much about our last chance qualifier. And before we get into the games, I know you guys are just dying for us to get into the games. We know you love hearing us talk at length. But last chance qualifier, you got one more opportunity. So go and follow everything that is Royale Masters out there in the world. Their Discord has all the information you need. If you don't like Discord, well, go to Twitter, click on the Discord thing, and then go get Discord. And of course, subscribe here on this YouTube channel, because we are far from done here at Royale Masters in 2023. We've got a couple more events. You will not want to miss them, and a lot more money. And Rich, we always see it in the chat. I could beat these guys. This isn't even a joke anymore. It feels like a joke because we've said it for so many years, but people still say it. So come do it. We always want to see new names. We always want to mispronounce your name and then DM you on Twitter and then ask how to say your name because you're new to the scene. Whatever. Do it. Join up. Royale Masters everywhere you can.
And that's important to remember. That's not just this classic style Royale Masters event, but there's the Royale Masters style of King of the Hill. They had their summer series. So there's stuff all throughout the year, both more hardcore and more casual, more down the line and more wild. I'm gonna mime this a lot, and we should be back with sound. All right, folks. We had
such a good
riff.
joke in there.
It was a really good riff that you missed and is now lost to history forever. But you know what's not lost to history? Our next matchup that has its own history, and that's going to be Mohamed Light against Sub, who faced off in the first round of the Snapdragon Pro Series bracket stage a couple of days ago, and it was Sub who came out with a very close win on top and knocked out Mohamed Light in the first round. And again, Andrew, we know Mohamed Light loses first rounds a lot. Usually it's double elimination, and then he just just wins everything else. But single elimination means you have one bad BO3 and you are donezo.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Sub is the hero of that tournament, right? He's the hero.
Yes.
Anyone is the hero of the tournament that can knock Mohamed Light out early on because it gives everyone else a much better opportunity to get to the top of that hill, right? And Sub went on to win that entire competition this weekend. So congrats to him. And we pick up right where we left off. I watched that cast. You guys did a great job. Minnie was the one that called. And I know we don't want to give credit to Minnie, but we have to give credit to Minnie because he picked Cal Sub and he won the whole thing. And, you know, I'm really excited to see what happens, you know, because you know Mo, you know Jebas, you know how much they want to adjust. I mean, that's the other thing about Mo that we love is he stays hungry even after all of these, you know, I guess you could say years at this point of success. Yeah. And so I'm very curious to see what he comes out with here in a great matchup against Sub. I mean, that's the best way to start our day. So for round 2, which is where we are at now, we still have 8 of our players remaining. We're going to start with Mo Light going up against Cal Sub. Following that, we have Inthrill and Assaf. We have Clown and Mr. Awesome, which actually I got to give a tip of the hat to Mr. Awesome. I thought Titone was going to take that set. And then at the bottom of our screen, we have Reuben, who was able to take out Ta, and then Aaza, who was able to take out Kurum. So we got a lot more Clash Royale coming your way today, guys. Thank you. We appreciate your patience. We will get to the gameplay very, very soon. But also, Rich and I were communicating with you guys in the chat. There's the bracket in there, and here's the bracket on screen, so you don't even have to avert your eyes. Rich, talk to me about what's going on here.
Well, as you said, Mohamed Light 2-0 against Legolas. We were watching on our own friends list. That was a fun one to watch. Sub over Paolo, and that's going to be such a fun quarterfinal matchup. Inthrill taking down Sandbox. So the team of SB and SB, Sandbox and our good friend SB, not able to overcome the surging Inthrill, who was one match away from making it to getting a golden ticket and going to CRO World Finals very, very recently. So Inthrill certainly on a run. Assaf takes out the veteran Adrian Piedra. That's going to be an interesting matchup. More on that when we get there. But then you get to the other side of the bracket, and you have two very different players. You have Clown, who was so close to World Finals, and then you have Reuben, who's making a triumphant return to World Finals after missing last year, and both of them with some fairly difficult outs with Mr. Awesome and Aaza in these quarterfinal matches.
Yeah, Rich, I mean, you look at the right-hand side of the bracket, and it definitely feels a bit less stacked than the left. I mean, you got Mo, Sub, Inthrill, and Assaf, who are all people that I don't think you'd be surprised if any of them showed up at World Finals. I mean, exactly what you just said, people missing it by just a few points. And then on the other side, you know, Reuben, who is there. So I guess it really, I mean, maybe it's not as light on the right side, but it does feel like Clown and Reuben should be what we get out of that side of the bracket. But upsets always happen at Royale Masters, so, you know, don't hedge your bets yet. We're going to get into the action here very, very soon, and I'm just excited to see what these guys come out with. You know, I think one of the things we were looking at in round 1 with Mo was, you know, we saw some really great matchups once again. You and I were both spectating his games offline in case we were to come back online, since that was the match that we had discussed we were going to talk about, and he found himself in really good matchups. I mean, that's something that he's always done, but, you know, in that second game we saw, or I mean, it was the second game, excuse me, where it was basically minor poison control with Exy going up against Lava with Rocket. It was just one of those situations where there's literally nothing you can do, and that's kind of what you need to do if you're playing against Mo, right? You need to get yourself in at least a 50-50 matchup. You never want to go to a 40-60, and honestly, you want to start at a 60-40 when you're going up against a guy like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're talking about micro, you're talking about macro, talking about all the things we've pretty much driven into the ground about how great Mohamed Light is at this game. But Sub found the magic last time around, a couple days ago, and got some good matches, but also had some really great gameplay. So those two things together, I'm excited to see what he does here today against Mohamed Light.
So here we go, Mo at the bottom of your screen, rocking that Evo Knight. No surprise there. Sub going to come out with the Evo Firecracker. Seeing a big uptick in use of the Evo Firecracker, and I'm going to say it, I think she's back. I don't know if she's as strong as she was when she first came into the game, but it feels like she's actually back in usage.
Yeah, she's definitely making a big comeback, and a lot of it is just the slight nerfs to the other very much more popular evolutions in the Knight and the Barbs. Just them going down a little bit, and then also some changes that made, I think, Hog maybe a little bit more popular, some other decks a little bit more popular. She's getting a little bit more time. And look, people also, we talk about the overreaction to nerfs, and that's maybe one of the great ones, is that she got nerfed from being a nuclear weapon that somehow you could get for 3 elixir. And she's still an insanely powerful Evo, and we're seeing some of that right now.
Yeah, just because those like sparkles don't tick the way that they used to, they still do damage from so far away. And you see a lot of the best, Firecracker players getting really aggressive with playing her near the middle of the map and just getting that great shot to either side of the tower. I mean, she really has become, a magic archer and an executioner plus a poison when she is used at her utmost. And then the other side of it is like bats. We never see bats Evo being used in competitive. It just feels like, you look at these 1 and 2 elixir cards like the Skellies and the bats, and it's been kind of hard for them to crack the code, which makes sense. You don't want something that's that cheap to be that powerful. And as of right now, it feels like a lot of the players out there just don't feel like the bats are worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, the ability is it's the most gimmicky feeling ability that we have so far, right? Because it doesn't really make the bats do much of anything. In theory, it sounds kind of cool, and there might be the rare occasion where it's OP, but in general, it's not going to make the bats achieve any moments that they don't already achieve, and that's what we're seeing is that challenge. And then, what we're also seeing here, I just want to point this out, is we're seeing a version of the Luminary deck with Hog instead of Miner, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I was going to say, the deck at the top of the screen is really, really interesting, and honestly, I'm thinking Sub might have rather had the Miner than the Hog in this situation, just because of all the great ways to stop and keep that Hog controlled. But, as it always is with that deck, it's going to be all about getting deeper and double and triple in those big heavy pushes. The NATO has been so helpful, whether it's to pull the Mega Knight closer to the bomb tower so it doesn't leap, or like we saw there, to help clean up bats behind whatever might be the tankier unit up front.
And here we go. You talk about that tanky push. Mega Knight Prince to the right-hand side. A little control here. And the Evo Firecracker just getting right into the conversation. And the poison, does it take her out? Yes, it will. But now, again, pressure mounting from Sub.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about. That he almost dropped that Firecracker at the same time as he dropped, at the same time those other units were crossing the bridge. Getting it over the middle there, the ability to still get on tower is one of those things that if you're playing Firecracker and you're not utilizing that positioning, then you need to change up your gameplay a little bit, because that is going to give you a ton of damage, and also it really makes it difficult for your opponent to position his defense.
I'm trying to figure out what the last card is here for Sub, because this is, again, a weird variation that has a lot of the pieces of the Luminary deck. Normally it's minor wall breakers in this, but I can't imagine that wall breakers are the last card here for Sub in this Hog construction.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, it feels like at this point it would have to be a bigger spell, like a lightning or a rocket, but that also doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And then you're like, well, is it graveyard? And you're like, well, obviously not. If he's got Hog, it can't be wall breakers, can't be graveyard, can't be Miner. So I'm very curious as well what that last card is. And yeah, the only reason I just say rocket is because there's been opportunities to use lightning. There's been obviously opportunities to use poison and fireballs. So it feels like that's just maybe what it is. But as of right now, Mo not really concerned about that conversation, as the Executioner lines up one time but not the second, bringing that tower down below 800.
Yeah, and this was a story of Sub just not being able to break through, Mo controlling really well, and then Sub just having a couple of moments where the defenses weren't quite it, right? We saw one where he played bats early behind his Princess Tower to the Executioner, and then the Prince right in front of it, which was just very, very simply dealt with, right? And it ended up with more Xe damage. And we saw so much Executioner damage from Muhammad Light in that game, which is 100% not what Sub wanted to be seen in that competition.
Yeah, I mean, the tankiness of the Xe to be able to late NATO and still get a connection, it's one of those things that's really nice that you don't have to think about it as much. You're like, well, is this worth the elixir or not? But when you're in double or in triple, if you can get one Xe boomerang, what is that thing even called? We've talked about this before. It's one of those on the tower. It's an axe.
It's an axe. It's an axe of some sort. I don't know why it comes back. It's an axe on a bungee cord. Like, why does the axe come back? Has no one ever? Can we get the CR team to get on the lore of why the axe returns? That's actually I haven't called out Clash Royale for it's a game where we have bats that listen to your instructions and we throw fireballs and stuff. So there's some suspension of disbelief. But just the physics of why does that axe come back? I don't think that's ever been answered, and now I think we deserve an answer.
Well, I'm pretty sure Supercell's freaking out right now. They don't want to have to answer that question. No one's asked it for years, and here we are. shaking things up. 7 executioners on the board. Couple of them were able to get on top of the tower there. As you can see, the matchup is really in favor of Sub at 6-8 or 6 of 8 cards and +4. But I feel like when you look at what this matchup actually is with 7 of 8 or 8 of 8, I do believe it is heavily in favor of Mohamed Light. That being said, the average person cannot defend as well as Mo did that time. I mean, you talk about those big beatdown pushes, the Hog coming in behind. He was always ready to go with whatever he needed. And then in the moments when he had to take damage, like by defending with just his Knight on a Hog or something like that, it was never in a situation that felt like one tower was so heavily weighted lower than the other. He just did a really great job of, I mean, what that deck does, which is control the game.
Controlling the game very well. And keep in mind, folks, again, for those of you who are going to go, hey, why is Sub repeating cards potentially? It's because in this Royale Masters version of duel mode, the winner cannot repeat cards. So Minor Log, Poison, NATO, right? So that triple spell, Poison, Log, NATO, all out for Mohamed Light. Sub can still play those 8 cards that we just saw if he wishes.
Rich, we should have known that Supercell is always listening. They're always watching, and apparently it's called a Boomerax. Duh. 6 years later, we're still learning things.
A Boomerax. I saw someone say, yeah, CR Esports, I see that in YouTube chat. I saw someone, Kiosk on the Twitch chat saying it's an Axarang. So either way, you know, Boomerax, Axarang. Chat, you vote now. Which one is a better term? Also, still not buying it. I think that we need to animate a bungee cord to the back of that axe. It just feels.
I think a Boomerax is just an axe that you and I use at this point. I think maybe we go Axarang because we don't want to do that to ourselves.
Sure.
We're just one game into this set between Mo and Cal Sub, as we talked about before. Mo trying to get a little bit of revenge over his friend after losing to him earlier this weekend and after a very dominant game number 1. Yes. I mean, that feels like this deck is kind of where he's going to go for a lot of today. We've seen him use it in both the sets already. And honestly, this is, you know, we used to talk about Mo being like one of the best Tesla players in the world, but really I think what it kind of came out to was just like when he was running Minor Poison a while ago, it was when Tesla was a little bit stronger. Then we saw him do it with Bomb Tower, we've seen him do it with Cannon. When it comes about Minor Poison and controlling the game, he's just really one of the toughest to beat. And I think the deck that Sub had is a good way to do it in the sense of, you know, those big beatdown pushes could be hard to manage, but I do think it was a little weird, as you called out during the match, that he went with a Hog as well. That the synergy of the Minor plus the Prince and the MK and the Bats is just a little bit better, in my opinion.
So here we go. Game number 2. Joining it already in progress. And keep in mind, again, with the Royale Masters dual mode format, you can see the unavailable cards for Mohamed Light because he played those 8 cards and 1 in game number 1. Sub can do whatever he wants here and opting to completely change tack, going Minor Wall Breakers, and this has all the look of the Remy Eli deck. We'll see if he actually is playing Magic Archer here.
You know, I like that skeletons are kind of becoming a thing. Kind of. Like, to the smallest extent that you could consider it. They're starting to show up on the Ultimate Champion leaderboard. They are showing up in competition a little bit more. They're being used more than bats. I don't know if it's a thing yet, but it feels like that they're trying to make it happen.
Well, getting those extra skeletons back was absolutely huge, and they didn't really require as much attention before. Now they require a whole lot more attention, and we've seen some games completely flip on the pressure those Evo skeletons present.
Yeah.
So they're definitely just they have been, interestingly enough, one of the hardest evolutions to balance, and I think that they may have finally figured it out as far as where it should land in terms of strength. But initially, it was way too strong, then it was way too weak, and now we're seeing it played. Well, I'm curious to see how creative these players like Mohamed Light get to making it into a truly impactful part of the meta.
Yeah, I mean, when it's only 1 elixir, you can't have it be too strong. We already know skeleton damage stacks up so quickly, so yeah, I agree. And there it is. Magic Archer does finally come down. Nice last send there from Sub. He was able to put a little bit more pressure on that left-hand tower by sending in a Minor, since Mo was just splitting Skellies, which actually allowed the wall breaker on the right-hand side to connect. So now you can see him, a little bit of blood in the water, going after that right-hand side. 25-30 to 29-42. Nice attempt at a NATO, I guess. Feels a little bit extra, but you know, that's one of the hardest things to do against Mo in this deck is predict your Magic Archers on him.
It is very, very difficult, and especially with that reduced, with that lengthened first target time, which really changes how reactive that Magic Archer can be. You can even see it just, the Magic Archer seeming almost sluggish with some of these interactions, and that's exactly the result of what we were talking about. And now, Royal Hogs taking advantage of the gap in the defense, NATO to pull into King Tower. Activation will be in, but the damage already done. Mohammed Light has put this one very close. Keep in mind, though, Sub, with the work on the left-hand side, still in the lead for the moment.
Yeah, Sub with a great send of the wall breakers there. Mo with the double cycled Royal Hogs, kind of just committing to that plan. He cycled them behind the left-hand tower, and then instead of opting to defend those wall breakers, he dropped a second set of piggies down. So, you know, some good damage came in, but obviously piggies against this deck is always tough. But I do like what Mo's done. You know, this matchup isn't one that you see super often anymore, but it is a tough one, right? So then you could see Mo already adjusting early on, going after he figured out that it was the Magic Archer version. Then you started seeing Royal Hogs go down behind that Princess Tower, which is just not something you normally see, but it might be a necessity in this matchup.
Well, you're also seeing that this is a much faster cycle version of pigs than we're used to, right? Seeing Ice Spirit Skeletons with you know, get small spell plus the 3 elixir EQ. This is a really interesting variation of this deck that gets around fairly quickly. The problem is that those pieces, like the Evo Skellies that we just saw, Sub with the log and the NATO just has so many good tools to deal with them.
Yeah, and that was another part of that. And I was like, I know I'm missing a piece of this part, this equation, but it was the pre-log on the Skellies as well that was just too much elixir for Mo to commit more to, so he kind of just had to eat the damage. But 1505 to 1520, and yeah, this deck is very similar to the Royal Delivery version of EQ with Cannon that was really, I mean, too popular for a while. And Mo changing things up a bit. Valkyrie's starting to show up a little bit more in the meta. I'm okay with that. She's been missed.
Yeah, I mean, just able to do some really great mini tanking, controlling multiple troops at once. The 360 attack is nice. The hard part here for Mo is that he has not been able to get it involved on the defense against these miners very often. He's been needing it to get up front for those pig pushes, and because of that, these miners have pretty much been able to play with impunity. Magic Archer going for more lineups despite the slow reaction time, still gets it done. GG, well played. Game number 3 on its way, and Sub threatening once again to upset the king.
Yeah, and really well played there. I mean, he recognized how uncomfortable it was for Mo to defend. I mean, that was the biggest thing, is he had such a hard time defending over and over. The Tesla placement, the Royal Hogs behind the Princess Tower. I mean, Mo was doing what he does. He was trying to innovate, but the EQ isn't as powerful as you want. That Snowball can't really deal with the pushes of the wall breakers behind anything. And of course, those spears, if the spears aren't taken care of, they're just such a nuisance on the map. So, you know, really, really well played there by Sub. You love to see, you know, this set kind of go to the distance after what we just saw a couple days ago. And then when you talk about, you know, the deck from Mo there, it is interesting, right? Like it's reminiscent of another deck that was very successful. And, you know, maybe he just found himself in a rough matchup here, but it's been tough to see, I guess, Valkyrie and AQ be used together again. Much success as it used to have.
Sure, it's a big shift, and I think that one of the hard parts here, when you're looking at Mohammed Light's deck, is trying to figure out. You want to use an Evo every single time, pretty much, right? You don't want to leave an Evo on the ground, and we're seeing here Valkyrie maybe just not quite as useful as the Knight, and then trying to mix the Archer Queen in. This was attempting to get some Evo value, attempting to get some 3-card cycle value. But what we've seen so far, and very curious to see what happens as we get more evolutions, as we get more cards into the end of the game, hopefully at some point, is right now Evos and most of the champions serve kind of the same purpose, so they haven't been able to mix very well. Mo trying to get that mix done here, and it's just not quite doing what he wanted. But then, of course, you have to also mix in the fact that it left him without a great response to the Knight because of what he needed the Valkyrie to do up on the higher part of the board.
It's that equation sitting on the chalkboard in the hallway at Harvard, you know? It's like, how do I get a champion and an Evo in a deck and it actually synergized the way that you would dream that it could? And I think that's something that everyone is still trying to figure out. We've seen versions of it here and there, but it just doesn't quite seem like, and you know what, and maybe that's a good thing. You know, maybe that's a design, not a flaw, but a design thing that is done by the balance team to make it like, yo, there's not going to be many instances where you can have a champion and an Evo. If there's just one out there, that's enough, right? And then that one deck will just dominate the entire game. Well, we've seen that before, but anyway,
Yeah.
I digress. We're going into game number 3 here. Mo dominating game number 1. I don't want to say sub-dominated game number 2, but he had a really good matchup and he played it really well. And one of my favorite things with that Remy Ellie deck is when you have someone deal with your first Magic Archer, and they've been so busy defending that they don't realize that you're back to a second one.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what we saw at the end. We've seen Mo do it many times before, too. But that second Magic Archer to end the game, it was already over, but I always love seeing it.
Yeah, it's and even with the nerf to Magic Archer, that targeting problem wasn't really a big issue here. And that was, again, a feature of the tools in the deck that Mohamed had to deal with the Magic Archer at the bridge and what was demanded for him in different situations. But perfectly managed the cycle there from Sub, who has been a very good cycle player for a very long time. And now, again, that chance to knock off Mohamed Light one more time. Interesting things to think about here, because, again, they've only lost one deck each. So NATO out for both players, Log out for both players, Miner out for both players, Evo Knight out for both players. Bomb Tower as well. The differences in what they don't have are it's Wall Breakers, Magic Archer, Spears that Sub can't play with, and then it's Poison, Xe, Electro Spirit that Mohamed Light no longer has. I'm very curious to see if Sub maybe goes Lava here to take advantage of Xe, Poison, NATO, Bomb Tower being out.
I almost wonder if he just goes to a version of Hog Rider. No, so we get recruits early on, so there's a lot of recruits decks out there. The one that we've seen a lot of is kind of like a Skeleton King recruits mortar spam, especially because wall breakers are out. That's another popular thing that is coupled with recruits, but still a lot of gameplay and a lot more cards to be shown. And this is another champion that's been showing up a little bit more once again, the Mighty Miner, even after his nerf that happened a little while ago kind of disappeared, as we've talked about the overcorrection, and now seems like people kind of miss this guy.
Yeah, the Mighty Miner is still, and again, we have to keep in mind that how different ladder is from dual mode, right? Playing ranked from dual mode, where you're able to make choices later in a game based on what you think the opponent you know you're matching up against might do, versus when you're just playing game after game against a random opponent in ranked matches. So that's one of the reasons why I love dual mode, is that the meta is just ever so slightly different because of the ability of players to react to their opponents, which is so fun.
So Mo somehow breaks through that, but now is left with a lot to deal with on the defensive. I mean, those Royal recruits are stacked. We got the Brawler up front. There's still a recruit in there with the shield on, but I think Mo should be able to deal with this pretty well. Flying Machine should connect on that right-hand side.
Yeah, that's not very much elixir, and there you go. Piggies to the left-hand lane. Fireball had to be saved for the pigs. Mo got a good read on this one here, right? You have some elements that show the possibility of lava, but once you get to the goblins and you have so much fireball bait, Mo just going, hey, I know that I have to eat this flying machine because otherwise there's going to be an absolute snack on that left-hand side.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you make. I mean, that's something that a lot of, newer players do, or even at the highest level, you'll see some of the players just kind of hit the panic button, and that overspend to deal with that flying machine instead of taking that damage would have just been game over. Could have done Piggies plus something else on the left, or just the Piggies alone, as you were talking about. No Fireball, and that would have been a rough place to be in. The Dark Goblin should be something that you really want to try to utilize in this matchup. The Dark Goblin, when you talk about coupling that with the Skelly Barrel, the Wall Breakers, and the Goblin Gang, you just really need to bait things out. There you go. So arrows are baited out. Now you got to get that Dark Goblin down immediately, and there he is.
There you go. Dark Goblin in, and then Gang 2, because you now can easily control this flying machine and create some counter pressure. So just recognizing, hey, your arrows are what you need for this situation, and I can go pretty hard. Now we'll see what Sub does with a pretty significant number of troops on the board for Mo.
And Mo's doing such a good job here of protecting that Dark Goblin, because that's really the bigger thing that you want to keep on the board. So if you bait out arrows in other places and that Dark Goblin stays alive, the value is just exponential. So see, there you go. Now the Fireball has to come out. So Fireball and arrows, that one Dark Goblin was on the board for maybe like 20 seconds, and you can see the results of it already.
This is the hard part here. I mean, one of the many hard parts for Sub here is that every response he has to these baity troops is either even or negative, right? So you love to play those arrows, but then you're left with Fireball to go and use, depending on these skeleton dragons will do an okay job here as well. And that Fireball, opportunistic, gets a lot of damage. And again, you see the Fireball is forced to come out on a few skeletons, and that just puts Sub in such a bad position.
Yeah, I mean, that's game right there, really. I mean, of course, Mo has to still send in a couple fireballs, and he has to defend, but, I mean, really, really great job of just kind of painting your opponent in a corner. It was so easy, right? It was just bait out the arrows, then you get the Dart Goblin on the board, and then eventually that Dart Goblin is going to cause enough of a problem to where you have to get that Goblin Brawler down. You're going to need more ground defense. Once that Brawler comes out in the cage, then you send in the Skeleton Barrel, and it's just rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. And exactly what you were talking about with the negative trades or the difficult trades, Mo just recognizes that and just restarts the cycle. And we've all been there before where you're caught in a losing cycle and you can't get out of it. And Sub just couldn't figure out his way to reset it.
Yeah, that was a whole lot of rough for him. And you know, I got nervous there when you said it was over because I hit Mo with maybe one of the worst caster curses I've ever had in the match against Sub.
The earthquake ticking, and what connected? What was it?
Oh, I can't remember what it was now. It was Snowball.
I screamed at the TV.
It was the. I have had some pretty rough caster curses over the years. That might have been the most abusive I've ever done. And so I was just sitting there going, I'll let Andrew take this call because I'm not doing nothing right now.
And interesting numbers there when you look. It actually looked like Sub had the dominant matchup, at least with 7 of 8 cards, but you really wonder what that one card difference is because you look at Mo's deck, one card, if it's a log instead of a fireball, which doesn't even make sense, but if it were to be, like if Sub had a log and arrows conversation, it did feel like Mo really had the advantage in that matchup. And when we look at that, you know, with what we saw, the exact match, it actually, the exact matchup chance, but there's only 7 instances of it. And 7 or more cards, like we saw 55-45 with 350 examples. So I don't know. I mean, Mo just doing Mo things, but at least when I'm looking at that matchup, it feels very difficult to keep up with.
Well, one of the things that I think Mo did very well, and I'm looking at the matchup right now, is he knew that he had these 3 different cards he had to target with Fireball. Right, so what he needed to do was be able to use Fireball when he wanted it, and be able to use the other cards to control. And what we saw, there was a great sequence we talked about when it happened, where he pressured Wallbreaker's left-hand side, forced out the arrows, which meant then that he could use the Dark Goblin and Gang nice and spread out a little bit to go ahead and take care of the flying machine. So that was a really key factor for him consistently throughout this matchup, was not just use the baity cards to bait out responses, but use the baity cards to create opportunities for him to use something other than Fireball to control the defensive side of the board. And that was a very important part of this matchup for him.
Yeah, and that's a really great point for you to make just to everyone out there in the world that plays the game. When you watch the best players in the world play, they don't always just go to the trigger response. They go to maybe 1 or 2 cards deeper than, okay, well, I could log this, or I could fireball this, or I could maybe take 50 to 100 and I could get more units on the board, or 0 damage to just get more units on the board, and it feels like overspent. A lot of the best players do that just because you want to have presence. You want to have control of the map. And, you know, Mo doing that, like you're talking about, making sure that Fireball is available on the other side, and it is a great thing for you to kind of point out to all the fans out there, the viewers out there that are wondering, how did he play through that matchup if that's that bad on paper? Well, it's all about adjusting. We even saw it in game number 2, right? Even though that you don't see people.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And you know, this deck, and I believe that this deck typically does run the Goblin Cage, but you also have this situation where you have a building here in the middle that didn't really add much, right? It didn't really help with controlling. It would pull one item, right? It would pull either the Skeleton Barrel or pull the Bomb Tower, but then get sniped from across the way by the Dart Goblin, and it didn't really add much defensively for Sub. So I'm not sure what the set, like you said, the 7 of 8, I'm not sure what the primary matchup normally would be here, but between that and then the Evo recruits, not really as being as effective for Sub maybe as he wanted, just found himself in a tough spot over and over again.
Yeah, you know, that the Dart Goblin is really just one of the most, it's still to this day is one of my favorite cards in the entire game, because it really can just completely shift the momentum of a matchup just because it stays on the board for 10 seconds longer than it's supposed to. Or, you know, like that one Dart Goblin was on the board for a very, very long time. And that just let Mo do things like, you know, over defend it and then send in something else to bait out spells again, make that elixir deficit just go further and further in his favor. So well played by him. He continues on, but there's still a lot more Clash Royale to be played here today. I mean, it feels like we've just been talking about Mo all nonstop because we were supposed to start the day with him, and then we went right into round 2. But now we got a lot of other guys that have a lot of money to win. Hopefully, next up is Assaf and Inthrill. And I'm excited for this one because Inthrill has been kind of clicking on all levels this year. As you mentioned, Rich, just barely missing World Finals. Whereas Assaf, the drill player, he might actually be in a moment where drill's kind of back. It's not dominant in any terms of the word in the meta, but it is viable once again, where it feels like it hadn't for maybe a couple months.
People are certainly playing it, and that's been big, right? It's come back a little bit. We've been seeing it more with Xe than with Magic Archer. People are kind of playing the old school NATO, Golden Knight, the whole combo there, the kind of bridge spammy version of drill. So that definitely does help him out a little bit, but it hasn't been super successful in competitive. And I think a lot of the meta right now is using a lot of cards that counter drill. The most popular of our champions at the moment seems to be the Skeleton King, and then you're seeing a Rise of Valkyrie coming back in. You're seeing Goblin Giant Sparky running with Dark Prince. You're seeing lots of Royal Ghosts. So it's getting played more, but it's not succeeding a whole lot more, which is an interesting place for it to be.
So Assaf leaks an elixir trying to figure out what he wants to do. Kind of surprising. I mean, I know it's only one elixir, but when you're playing a deck that cycles the way that his does, maybe just a bit of decision-making. You know, you get caught really quick with option paralysis, and going to take only a little bit of damage on that right-hand side.
And a quick note here, Inthrill is just a little bit outside, is just one spot outside of our top 6 coming into today. So a win here would guarantee him a minimum of 6 points and put him pretty strongly into our top 6 spots. Of course, there are other players vying for those spots as well. Whereas Assaf currently only has 3 points on this competition and needs to get a couple more wins here to have any hope of qualifying through points.
And I was just going to say, Assaf going to have to just kind of pump the brakes right here. A lot of, I think, newer players would maybe have tried to send in another Hog Rider right then, but he knew that the Royal Recruits were Evo in cycle, and you just cannot commit offensively if there's no utility to the, like, you cannot send a Hog Rider in, get nothing out of it other than maybe one Hog swing, and then have not enough elixir to deal with the Recruits defensively. They're just too powerful in single. It's very similar with Barbs. You'll see people kind of bait out an over-response from their opponent and then just go Evoed Barbs right at the bridge. So Assaf doing the correct thing, now getting back on offense with the Hog and not taking too much in single from those Evoed Recruits.
A little slowdown here as both players kind of resetting, entering into double elixir time. And as we go deeper and deeper, these skeleton dragons,
yep.
They're going to be a bigger problem. The only way to really get on those is that Firecracker, and it seems like Inthrill has her pretty well read.
Yeah, because that's the other thing is, you know, Assaf is going to have to kind of innovate the placement of his Firecracker, if that even makes sense, because every single time Inthrill can go minor plus log to that Firecracker, and the goblins are always going to get caught, but he needs that knight somewhere else. So that's something that's really tough for Assaf to kind of navigate right now is, well, how do I keep my Firecracker on the board and also not have to use my knight to defend my Firecracker? So you see right there, Firecracker goes to the side, but it gets poisoned off as the recruits connect on the right-hand side. Knight, not really enough of a counter push, so this is just, it's going to be interesting.
It's not even an Evo Firecracker, right? Because the evolution spot's gone to the knight, so it makes it even harder to get those skeleton dragons off the board. So this will be, again, the longer this goes, I think the worse this is for Assaf. Obviously, I don't think he's going to get a tower down in these next 2 minutes, but those hog shots, very, very important for him.
Yeah, and I think Inthrill goes, all right, that's fine. You can get those couple hog shots, but he has to make something big happen right now. Log out on the left-hand side. Now we see Wallbreaker cycled in the back. Maybe Evo Recruits up front. There we go. And now we're going to see the bomb tower come back down. But will the Skelly Dragons over the middle be able to deal with it? No Skelly Drags.
And no, here they go, pressuring with the Firecracker out and the bomb tower out. This is just about trying to pressure that right-hand lane. Did a good job of kind of faking to the left-hand side. Does need to control this Hog Rider. Bomb Tower will do that. And now the Evo Knight out of cycle with triple elixir flowing, 1 minute left. This is the opportunity for Inthrill to start putting a lot of pressure. And the pre-log, the Bomb Tower has to come out. So even though the damage is saved, Bomb Tower now out of cycle, big opportunity for Inthrill.
And Inthral with a great predictive miner there to get that firecracker shot away from the recruits. But Assaf, well, okay, never mind. I was going to say a nice Ice Spirit there from Assaf to protect the firecracker, but Skelly Dragons still get on top. And while there's only 30 seconds remaining, this is when this deck is at its scariest. Inthral goes to the bomb tower instead of the princess tower. Here we go.
And he's going to have to just eat this hog shot and then try to overwhelm and take the damage. There you go. A lot on the left-hand side. That's huge. Skelly Dragon going miner on the right-hand lane. Inthral takes the damage to give the damage and comes out on top in the final 13 seconds.
You know, it's so funny because this deck that Inthral is running is like, you know, Juicy is running a version of this deck, like it's a troll version of it with like Elixir Pump. But the main piece is the Skeleton Dragons, the Recruits, and the Wall Breakers, and the ability to kind of just keep dropping everything right at the center of the map on your side. The Recruits obviously split off and go across the bridge. The Wall Breakers split off and try to go across the bridge, but those Skeleton Dragons over the middle, especially when you only have Firecracker and Bomb Tower, they become, and in this game became so difficult to deal with. You talked about it when we were 2 minutes away from the end of the game. Those Skeleton Dragons are going to be a problem, and as long as you can get them over the middle like that and snipe that defensive building, especially if it's a bomb tower, that is when things go really, really south. And Inthral did a pretty good job of hanging on, but it just becomes so tough with that overwhelm when you get in triple elixir.
Yeah, a real problem. And you saw, it's an interesting choice, right? Putting two Evo-based cards in the same deck. They're both still very viable cards. I don't know how much I love playing a Firecracker at all without playing the Evo version of Firecracker. I understand that Knight is so much, Evo Knight is probably the strongest Evo in the game still, at least top two. But I don't love the value you get out of Evo Firecracker in that deck in particular, at being kind of a slightly slower version than you might want to be running. It's not, you're not going to get from her what you need, and you saw that he left himself wanting.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you said that deck in particular. I think what's really interesting is like that there's been people that play both versions of it, and it did just feel like it almost felt like Assaf is maybe more comfortable with the Firecracker version at Evo, but he knows the Knight version is better. I mean, we did see the Knight save him in that game a couple times when, I mean, that's the best use of the Knight is when you're overwhelmed, you're down an elixir, and you can just drop it defensively to save your tower. But either way, you know, we saw Assaf come out with, you know, a lot of cards that he's familiar with that kind of have been used around Drill, all quick cycle cards, but not obviously going to Drill to be too predictable. So we'll see if he comes out with his comfort here in game number 2. And, you know, I see someone in the chat talking about, you know, the spamminess of that deck. And it really, I think the hardest thing about the deck that Inthral ran is that you can't expect to win the game early on. That deck becomes so insanely devastating in triple elixir, which is why I see a lot of the best players that use that deck just kind of like hang out for the first like 4.5 minutes. And then that final 30 seconds, that final 45 seconds is when things get wild. And that's exactly what we saw. That overwhelm ability and the ability to just drop things at the bridge. It doesn't feel very skillful when you're watching it, but to get to that point takes a lot of skill.
Yeah, it certainly does. And now Assaf has an interesting kind of riddle to solve here. This deck didn't work out very well for him, but again, we're in the RoyaleMSTRS version, so Assaf still has the full deck pool to pull from, whereas Inthral has Log out, Miner out, Poison out, Bomb Tower gone as well, Royal Recruits out. This becomes, I think that with the Skeleton Dragons being out as well, I don't think Assaf wants to run anything that's Fireball based, right? And a lot of the drill decks that he might run Fireball, so I don't necessarily love that as a choice. Looking at Log being out, though, that does on the flip side give you the idea he might go drill, but the big problem here is pretty much every ground-based splash damage troop is available for Inthral. If I'm Assaf, I'm trying to maybe play something that really benefits from Log being out, and here we go. Skelly, the Evo Skellies for his choice.
Yeah, interesting there. I see someone in the chat going, only 2 poisons that entire match. And yeah, I mean, you wonder why, right? But when you go and you back and you watch that match, one of the poisons was used, I think they maybe both were used to take out firecrackers. But this goes back to the point that we made earlier about, you know, just because it's direct damage it doesn't always mean it's the best choice. Sometimes, especially with that deck that we just saw, it's just better to get more units down on the board. And, you know, that was what Inthrill's plan was the whole time. You'd think maybe more poisons out there to get on top of that bomb tower, princess tower, but, you know, your opponent's not going to give you as much poison value as you'd like. Better to just get more units down.
What an interesting matchup here, because we're seeing what appears to be a minor wall breakers variation with the Inferno Tower, and the Royal Delivery does get the King Tower activation for Inthro, which is going to be very impactful. But it looks like Assaf was maybe going for some sort of snipe here, and he is playing drill wall breakers, so why not do it? And here's a Dark Prince immediately out, and this is what I was talking about. Every single splash ground troop was available for Inthrill here. The chances of him not using one was probably a 1 in 10 at best. And now Assaf has to find out the riddle of how do I create significant damage against a King Tower activation and a Dark Prince and running drill wall breakers. He's going to have to get those wall breakers going a bit more than the drill.
Yeah, I mean, this matchup all the way around the board is pretty tough. You know, you talk about the Dark Prince and the Exy to deal with the drill. You know, you've got the bats that are always going to be a bit of a problem because there's no way to get on top of them other than the delivery. You've got the NATO and the Zap to deal with the Skellies, and the Zap is also going to help with the Inferno Tower. So, Inthrill pulling off a nice bit of a snipe here, just going, all right, what's the most viable wall breakers deck out there? And that's an unfortunate set of wall breakers, but, you know, it is what it is. Maybe could have went for a surround.
And
there's the Zap for the Skellies.
Yeah, takes care of those easily. It means the Zap isn't available to work on the Inferno Tower, which does its job very well. So this will be interesting, because both of these guys have a lot of nice counters to their opponent. Notice that also Inthrill is here running a Goblin Giant beatdown deck, but with no rage. Like, you're not running a Sparky variation.
Yeah.
You're not running a Rage variation. So the typical overwhelm of the Sparky variation is not available. The surprise, or like that big aggressive one Destructo push that you usually get out of the Rage variation, not there as well. So this is going to be defense and try to win a big counter push. But between the Delivery, the Valk, and the Inferno Tower, that's not going to be easy.
And Exy gets a nice lineup there on the Valkyrie plus the Dark Goblin. Assaf gets another Dark Goblin on the board, now sends in a drill to the opposite side here. And I think a spell has to come out. There we go. I was like, he's got to either zap or take a shot.
I also don't, and I mentioned this before, that I didn't think Assaf should run something that runs Fireball. And you see him here running Fireball. The big difference here is that he will have a little bit more ability to get damage on tower late game, as there's not the NATO Zap or the direct spells for his opponent. Yeah. But I'm still just a little, with the Skelly Dragons out, the likelihood of him of Inthro running something that was really going to be devastated by Fireball was very small. So a couple interesting choices. Not to say this won't work out, because you see Assaf getting good damage, but I don't know if it's because of his deck choice or because of Inthrill's deck choice.
Ooh, and that was a very bad Fireball. That Fireball might just end the game. You can see Inthrill just seeing, all right, that's a huge commitment. Knight is still tanking for the Bat, still tanking for the Mini P.E.K.K.A., tanking for the Dark Prince, and that is GG. Well played. I don't really know why. I got it actually pulled up on the other screen here. I don't understand the Fireball. He goes Delivery on top. I think he's trying to kill the Executioner. He goes Delivery Fireball right on top, but the Knight is still up front. It's still walking and tanking the entire time. So just a bit of a miscalculation there by Assaf. Inthrill takes that set 2-0 in a nice fashion from a man that barely missed our World Finals.
Yeah, I understand the desire to go comfort when you're down 1-0, but you have to look at what Inthrill ran the last game. He didn't run any drill counters in game number 1. Didn't run a single one. And he ran a part of Fireball bait that is kind of necessary. And then so you go in game number 2 and you play Drill Fireball. Like I said this before, the chances of Inthrill not running a direct drill counter were almost 0. And this was just not. This was just a, in my opinion, a really, really poor deck choice from Assaf in game 2.
Yeah, you know, I think that's really just the only thing that you can chalk it up as. You always wonder, do I go comfort in game 1 because they don't think I'm going to go to it? But when your backup is up against the wall, you never want to be put in that spot to where you feel like you have to go comfort, and your opponent just know, like when you're known for that deck, right? You're Remy Ellie, you're Assaf, you're one of those guys out there that just has a deck that you are known for.
Yeah.
Because then on the other side of it, you look at Inthrill and you go, what are you thinking? How could you not have thought he might play drill? And that's the other thing. How could you thought he might have not? It's not even that he will. It's just you got to cover it, just like you said, man. So, you know, well played by everyone there. This isn't like anything of kind of hating on Assaf's deck choice. I understand it. I'd probably want to play the deck I'm best with too after dropping that game #1. Just maybe finding ways to play something similar or maybe something that's just a little bit less predictable. I don't know. It's tough, but either way, when you're going up against like someone like Inthrill, that's just another layer of something you don't want to put yourself in a spot for because he's already that good.
Who does?
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, who does, for the moment at least, jump into our top 6. Inthrill picking up 3 more points here, alongside the 3 points picked up by Nexus earlier, Nexus aka Aaza. We have some movement on the leaderboard. I don't know when we'll get our leaderboard graphic up here again, but we've definitely had some movement. And Inthrill, like I said, we still have a lot more Clash Royale to be played today, including Reuben, who is in the hunt to make those top spots here. But Inthrill, for the moment, is in a qualifying position for our finals.
Yeah, Inthrill and Mohamed Light will be playing in our next round. A really exciting, could have been World Finals matchup, maybe in 2024. And as we go on through the rest of the bracket, we have Clown going up against Mr. Awesome. Clown, Kick-Ash, he's a guy that has obviously impressed us here. We saw him with, in the Samsung Galaxy tournament playing and representing CR there as well. So definitely starting to get a bit of momentum. You know, you talk about his star meter kind of rising, probably pretty exciting for him. But as you know, Rich, that's when things get the hardest, right? It's always fun to come into a competition and surprise people, have the casters talk about you. But once you're a known commodity, that's when you really got to start putting stuff together. And I think that's why some of the greats like we're talking about in this tournament, the Reubens and the Mohamed Lights of the world, their respect is so monumental for them because doing it season after season, year after year, that's the hardest part.
And Mr. Awesome, also known as The Awesome, you talk about Mohamed Light, part of Team Egypt alongside Mohamed Light, and certainly a fairly talented player, of course, part of that Team Egypt squad that won No Tilt Worlds in 2021, and definitely not an easy out here for Clown.
No, not at all. And kind of interesting to see how much recruits have kind of been used in every game almost now, it feels like. Whereas it started at the beginning of our day, it felt like they were just a little, maybe saving them for later on in the set. I'm not sure exactly what the idea is, but now it seems like they're just going to be in at least one of the first 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at everyone's tier lists, this is run up heavily in terms of the overall tiers for our Evos specifically. I know the game overall, and it just, the value you get out of recruits has always been good, and now you add in that Evo value, and for 7 Elixir, you just get so much pressure on the board.
Yeah. Yeah, so here we go. Mr. Awesome trying to do that thing that we've talked about many, many times before. Those last 2 cards, we got a champion and an evolution. And same thing at the top of your screen, but this one that Clown is running has already proven to be successful. We'll see if Mr. Awesome can do the same with his deck.
Yeah, I'm curious about how much value Clown's going to get out of the Mother Witch, right? You have Arrow's Snowball, but you don't have a single way to get the Mother Witch out. So we'll see Arrow's Snowball, and you see immediately just Awesome wants nothing to do with that Mother Witch in that exchange.
Yeah, and that's going to be the kind of the key to success for Clown here, right? Stacking souls by defending on the right-hand side, creating pressure on the left, and that's going to be the name of the game throughout. And wow, that is a massive connection. Those Spear Goblins are also going to get on tower. Dealing with the Skeleton King ability, archers are dropped on the left-hand side instead of in the center of the map, and now you can see the Miner just going in behind because that Inferno is just a slow burn on this defensively. And now we see a full send for Mr. Awesome. I don't know, Rich.
Yeah, well, that Monk's going to get held up right there at the bridge, right? So the Monk's going to have no help to give to the balloon. You're going to get a couple of balloon shots here, maybe just one, but you're not going to get enough out of it. So Awesome just trying, as you said, to full send, and this Fisherman getting nowhere involved with that Miner is going to put this in very dangerous territory for Awesome.
Yeah, it was so tough because you've heard players talk about this in the past is, when you get hit really hard, you always want to hit them hard back, but sometimes you just don't have what you need to do it, and right there, I don't know if that's exactly the case for Awesome. He still gets a balloon drop out of it, and, the game already feels so far out of reach. But who knows if maybe a pause and an actually well-orchestrated push would have been the better choice.
Well, you see the combination, and Austin did a snowball here and try to get more from the Loon, not going to get it. The Mother Witch and Wall Breakers together in this specific instance are so devastating for Awesome because he cannot spend his best counter to the Wall Breakers on Wall Breakers. He has to spend it on the Mother Witch, so you see him eating a lot of Wall Breaker shots because he needs the arrows. Is Fireball here for Clown? Fireball just barely keeping them off the tower. The arrows having to go to the Mother Witch alongside the Snowball, meaning he doesn't have them for the Wall Breakers, has created fits and problems for Awesome. And he's going to have to spend a lot of spells here just to stay alive.
Yeah, I mean, just to game one there by Clown, really well played. I was just feeling that Awesome was almost starting to shift the tides there, and I don't know if that actually does go back to should he have sent that balloon in earlier or not, because he ended up getting damage from it, right? But it was almost like he kind of cracked the code as the game went on. If he would have maybe just have dropped those archers in the center of the map to defend earlier, I don't know if that would have been enough to get that tower to be, maybe closer to 1,000 instead of in the several hundreds. But it felt like Awesome was kind of figuring it out as it was just a little bit too late.
Yeah, I'd certainly say that was part of the feeling here. And you just, again, the Mother Witch in combination with Awesome's counter to Wall Breaker's situation, they both have to play kind of the same role here. And Clown is able to get momentum faster. Look at just how heavy the average elixir for Mr. Awesome 4.0. The 3.9 doesn't exactly tell the story here because Clown doesn't have to lean on those recruits in the same way, right? So Clown did use the recruits 5 times, but didn't have to lean on them as much. And you see the Wall Breakers and the Gang being played a whole lot, or the Wall Breakers and the Spears being played a whole lot earlier on. He's able to play a little bit faster cycle game and put more pressure on during single elixir than his opponent was, and there you see the win.
Yeah, and the other part of that conversation is kind of what we started the day off, or we talked about numerous times too, is like the champions and the evolutions coming together. You saw there, they both played their champions 4 times, which you're like, okay, cool. They both have, a 3-card cycle. But I think the thing is that the Skeleton King got so much more utility and value and presence than the Monk did. The Monk's ability kind of felt non-existent. It felt like more of it was just like a ground tank that did damage that you would kind of want to throw in front of your big pushes. Whereas we saw what that Skeleton King did. It just creates such a problem defensively, and you always have to be worried about that, that ability coming out. Even if it's only a third of the way stacked with souls, it still is enough to be frustrating. And so a really well-played game number 1 there by Clown. You guys saw the numbers on screen there. They don't really tell the whole story. I think the sample size of both of those combined was still less than 30. So there's just not a lot of this matchup specifically out there in the world, which makes sense. It is a very unique one. But here we go. On to game number 2. And if we're going to talk about the things that are and are not available, I mean, these guys did a pretty good job of leaving a lot of the best things in the world open. The one thing that we haven't really talked about much today, Rich, and it popped in my head because the Fisherman was used by Mr. Awesome, and it's just that we haven't seen Royal Giant, and it does feel like Royal Giant is actually coming back. Like, I don't know about the tier list of Evos, but I feel like he's like 3rd, right? 3rd or 4th?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's kind of right in the middle with the Evos right now.
I guess it would be 4th. Yeah.
One of the hard parts with Royal Giant right now, and I'm really glad you brought up the Monk. But one of the hard parts about Royal Giant right now is because things like Goblin Giant Sparky are coming back a whole lot, because some beatdowns coming back more. There's a lot more things that counter Royal Giant are getting popular again. So it's again the rotating cycle of everything continues to make the meta more and more interesting. And here we go, Clown going with Golden Knight, which we saw a little bit earlier this week. And I'm still continue to be a little surprised that Golden Knight is so much in the meta right now.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that when you mentioned Golden Knight earlier, and then we just kind of got on a train of going on a different path. But you had mentioned it on your broadcast at ESL that you'd seen a lot more Golden Knight than you had thought. But I think you said it still hadn't been super successful. Is that correct?
Yeah,
or am I misspeaking?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
No, I think that maybe people are trying to figure out the meta. Maybe it's having some success in ranked gameplay, but it's just not succeeding here very well. And this is really nice. Clown's got to be really happy to have the Electro Dragon, but now he has this big push to contend with. Seeing a little Goblin Giant Sparky, and that Rage, NATO pulls everything together, but it's just forcing more expenditure out of Clown.
Yeah, I mean, that
what
is
arrows.
just an ugly, ugly, I don't want to say starting hand or what, but that just, all things going wrong, because I was sitting here looking at the matchup and you're like, okay, well, maybe this is kind of a snipe. You've got the E-Dragon for the Sparky, you know, you've got a building and a NATO, you've got the Firecracker, and I didn't see a big spell at that point, but there are the arrows there to deal with it. Just felt like Clown put himself in a decent spot, but you talk about being painted into a corner, that defense, it felt like he had to cycle something to get to his Firecracker, and then that was all able to get arrowed off the board. So we'll see. I mean, this not a good way to start, but you know, obviously, as Goblin Giant Sparky has proven before, is a deck that you can come back against, just because it requires so much to kind of all be put together in one lane.
Yeah, this is, again, I mentioned the Monk that you brought up earlier, and this Golden Knight conversation is kind of similar, where you have the Monk and the Golden Knight, both in these decks are playing kind of a mini tank role, but they're both expensive mini tanks that arguably have better options, right? So it's interesting to see the Golden Knight struggling, the Monk struggling, and part of it is that just Evos outstrip them doing the same job.
Yeah, that was a really odd decision there by Mr. Awesome also to drop those barbs up that high. You understand he was trying to, I think, protect his E-Wiz because there was a bar barrel thrown at it, but those barbs all being dropped that high, they're all on the left-hand side. They're all going to work down the lane with the bowler, and that just is a really bad use of your elixir. I mean, at least split them down lower.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is to just let that E-Wiz go. You don't need to commit that much elixir to it.
Sparky to the right-hand lane, E-Drag in reply. Sparky, the Electro Dragon, not easy to deal with for Mr. Awesome.
No. And actually, this is going to be a great way to deal with it. That raged up Spear Goblins on the back. Now the Sparky finally has a way to get a shot in here. Evoed Barbs down in the opposite lane. You love to see it now that both the big heavy troops on the ground are down.
But well controlled with that bar barrel firecracker combination, and now dual lane pressure. And this is nice, isn't it? You'll see Clown get a little bit out of the bowler on the right-hand side. Maybe he gets one, yeah, but he's not going to get a lot in the left-hand lane. But really it was just, hey, let me force you to spend where you don't want to spend. You want to win the right-hand lane. Awesome's going to get some good damage, though, and this is going to turn out to be a whole lot more. The Rage is just such a crazy wild card in this deck.
I love the fact that Rage is a real thing. It really, truly is. And it took so many years for it to be viable, but now it has proven to be really a great spell. And there we go, Firecracker over the middle. Now the arrows come out late, but it's evoed, so you have to see the 5 elixir come down after the Firecracker already connects to that left-hand tower. 825 to 825. We are dead even here with just 40 seconds remaining.
That Dark Prince might win this fight and continue to control there at the top, and that's going to turn that bowler around. Bad news for Clown here, although he goes double bowler here at the bridge. Not getting any lineups yet, but keep an eye on that NATO. He might try to win the race here rather than defend against that Goblin Giant. No, he pulls the Goblin Giant back because he's going to get the bowler lineup anyway.
Where's the drill?
Can
There's
he
the
defend?
drill.
There you go. GG, well played. What a game by Clown.
Yeah, really. It really was a really fun one to watch. The adjustments throughout, the ability to, or not the ability, but the recognition to start stacking those bowlers. Those bowlers were such a problem, because then if you are going to get those bowlers down and you bait out a Sparky, that's where you go, all right, perfect, I can drop my E-Drag in that lane. And, you know, that was just really what it was all about, is if the Sparky comes down, get the E-Drag in the same lane, and then just start to control the board wherever else you can.
And taking a look at that matchup here, you see, again, Mr. Awesome struggling here, and he had some really great moments, had some very, very good moments. But here we're seeing, what I'm curious to see is how many different drill variations we're seeing. Right, this is a totally different concept. Yes, you still have the Golden Knight, and yes, we're seeing Firecracker again, but it's a completely different universe, and it's both the people trying to figure out what works well with drill right now, but also the creativity, and Clown coming out, overcoming, and getting a great win.
Yeah, really unique deck there from Clown. I mean, this is kind of what I meant when I was talking about Assaf playing a version of your deck that isn't as usual or isn't as typically seen. And obviously, I don't know if this deck would have worked. I don't even know if this deck is a real deck. It worked great in this matchup by Clown, kind of, right? He still had to steal the game at the very end. But this is more so what I meant, is if you're going to try to play your comfort deck, play it a weird version of it. Usually you'll hear us say play on meta, but if you're known for that, then this is a great opportunity to play something a little bit weird. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but at least you're not put in that same position that Assaf found himself in. So Clown doing what he's done many times here at Royale Masters, which is win. And honestly, I just as impressed as I was the first week we saw him in this competition, I still love the decks he's coming out with, and I love his mid-game adjustments. You love to see on the board the player's mind like evolving, and you can see all the things changing throughout, and I think Clown is really doing a great job of that.
And here we go, jumping right into our next matchup, Reuben and Aaza, aka Nexus, by the way, for those of you who might know Nexus from his content creation. So same person, and I'm just confirming this right now, but I believe that win by Inthrill, which gets him a few more points, I believe because we are seeing Nexus versus Reuben right now, that has secured Inthrill a space in our top 6, and he is guaranteed to move on to our playoffs. So we have Mohamed Light, Inthrill, and Kickash, aka Clown, who were all already in the top 6 and moving in a spot towards our grand final. They are also part of our final 4. So I'll wait for a final confirmation, but I believe that not only has Inthrill guaranteed his spot, but now it's the big question of, can Reuben overcome Nexus? If he can, he has the chance to surpass Sandbox and move into that top 6 as well.
We love a good name change in Clash Royale, Rich.
No, it's my favorite thing in the world. Nothing I like better than name changes repeatedly.
So big push here coming down the right-hand side. Hog will activate King, but what is there for the Evo Knight? A Firecracker? Goodness gracious, tower basically down. 13-21. Luckily, the Fish Boy is able to get the bleeding stopped. 13-21 after a very, very just like calculated full send by Reuben. You know you're going up against Royal Giant. You know what's in and out of cycle, and I love to see plays like that.
Yeah, and taking a look at this one more time points-wise, I believe that Nexus, a.k.a. Aaza, is also safe in our top 6. So this is really more about, can he improve his position as we talk about the what your matchups will be when you're in the finals? Can he improve his seeding? Or can Reuben overcome Aaza, a.k.a. Nexus here? A win in this match would jump him up over Sandbox.
And that's a great Knight. Look at the Knight and Bomb Tower placement there. One of the best combos in the game is that Monk in front of the RG. It bounces the Bomb Tower back. It bounces back the Musketeer shot. But you see the Knight offset to the other side. RG goes in towards the center with the Bomb Tower. And now you don't have to worry about that stacking ability.
And just a little cycle work on the right-hand side with the Fireball. Just easy does it with this very interesting, similar to 2.6, just simple Hog Cycle deck from Reuben.
And Reuben, though, letting a lot damage come in. 1565, that Lightning is trouble. This Evo'd RG should still be able to get a shot. Double Knight comes down, and there you go. That second Knight body blocking just a little bit is just enough. 1248, 362. Reuben's still not wanting to cycle anything, as that's why. Game over.
GG, well played. Reuben wins game number 1, and let me just do a little correction here. I don't have confirmation exactly yet. If Reuben wins this match against Aaza, he would have 11 points, the same as Sandbox, and then it would come down to what the tiebreaker is, and I'm getting confirmation on that tiebreaker. So before anyone goes out and says, Reuben definitely is in with this next win, just hold your horses a little bit here, as we all know that qualification math is my favorite part of Clash Royale.
I was just going to say, I'm so glad that you still love the qualification math, because after all these years, I just like to listen to you talk about it, and it lets my brain kind of absorb all of it, but actually going and doing the math, come on, man, I got fantasy points to count. I can't do that right now. This is why we need you, Rich.
Yes,
as we
that's why
move on through here, Aaza, a.k.a. Nexus, needing a win after Reuben taking that game in really dominant fashion. I mean, honestly, when something happens that is that wide swinging early on, it just feels like what happened is the person that got hit just really overspent or just didn't think about what their opponent was going to send their way. I mean, an Evo Knight Hog push in single elixir like that and taking that much damage just means that you did not set yourself up thinking about what was going to come your way. And then Reuben was basically able to coast for the rest of that game. And we've seen this a couple times now today where, you know, someone like Mr. Awesome, I believe it was, and Aaza, they're kind of figuring it out as the game moves on, but that's what the best players in the world do. We talk about clown adjusting, you know, and how much we respect that. I just think the over aggression in single elixir is really hurting you. And then, you know, I don't know. I think that's just where I'll stop that thought. I just don't understand that happening a couple times now today, because these guys, if they're able to just slow down a little bit, they had great things working for them in double and triple.
Yeah, and that's what we've talked about a little bit, right? Because we've pointed out some of the great players able to make those mid-game adjustments, but it's, do you make them early enough, and do you sacrifice too much before you make them, right? And I think that's a very common Clash Royale story. How many games have you been where you get down to the final minute or so and you start realizing you could have won this if you just hadn't been so ridiculous in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game? If you just made recognize the right sequencing, the right match, the right way to macro this thing. If you just figured it out earlier and you're like, hey, can we? That's why I wish there was a rematch button in Clash Royale, because if you could just like insta rematch and go, yo, let me just show you why I actually should win. I actually can win this. The catharsis there would be so nice.
I actually think that's the best idea you've had in our almost decade of casting together, is the rematch button after a loss. Because there's so many times where I'm like, if I just played my mortar, as a defensive building, I would have just won. And I just didn't do it for some reason because I'm an idiot. And that's, so here we go. We'll see if Aaza has learned anything in the interim, as we are now into game number 2, our former world champion on top on the scoreboard.
And I'm still thinking about this 2.9 Hog Cycle deck that he played. I'm kind of surprised I haven't run into it a ton. It feels like the kind of deck that would be out there a whole lot. And what I also really like here is Reuben going with something he's really known for in game number 1, playing some Hog, and then game number 2, swapping to Lava Hound, which is going to go right into an Executioner. So, you know, take it as you will.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with Lava, right? We saw Lava Loon. It was really popular for a little bit there, and then this massive uptick in the Executioner has just been a nuisance for everyone up in the air. And this deck in general has been, when you talk about the ability to control, the ability to create presence on the ground with the barbs, you know, that NATO, the poison, all of it. Now you see a log cycle to get something else down, and it's another Exy.
Yeah, but definitely a little mistime on the poison, though. The mistiming on the poison has just opened him up to a whole lot of damage that he really shouldn't have taken here. And, you know, a few things happened that were strange there. I thought the miner out of Reuben would have, after the E-Drag connection, would have retargeted the Exy to the miner. That didn't happen. And then Aaza just being a little off, maybe a little hasty with the poison play, didn't take the pups, and that forced him to do a little bit more here and ends up with kind of a unfortunate damage deficit, and now an Exy out of cycle for when this next lava push comes in.
And, you know, Rich, this is kind of the Reuben that we know, right? The Reuben we know and love. We always talked about how he was a methodical player, and then he would just be able to feel or recognize what was out of cycle and then just punish you and just win the game in one big push. And then it felt like as the game kind of evolved, it didn't leave Reuben behind, but it felt like that mid-game, late-game adjustment was just a little too late, right? It just, with the way the players play, with the way the game is, it just felt like that adjustment was just a little slower than it needed to be. Now what we've seen so far in this set, you know, we saw that really aggressive Hog Knight push, and the same thing in this game. The early poison, recognizing that my opponent had to cycle logs, they're low in elixir, so let's just spam the bridge. And I really do love the aggression that we're seeing from Reuben right now, but it's also calculated aggression.
Yeah, I mean, it's you talk about sort of that dip in Reuben's performance, and I think there's a few factors to think about there, right? One is world champion hangover, which we've seen so many times from so many players, and just kind of taking their foot off the gas a bit. But then also the switch from teams to solo. And there are not a lot of players who've made that switch really easily. And just a great 2-0 set here from Reuben.
Yeah.
Who, again, I'm going to get confirmation on the tiebreakers. I don't know for sure if that means he surpasses Sandbox or if the tiebreakers put him behind Sandbox. As soon as I know, you'll know. But I think that the big change in having that structure of a team house where you're living with them, you're practicing all the time, and then suddenly switching to not having that structure, it's not easy to suddenly transfer over that same work style from one work style to the other. But what we're seeing here is Reuben is back as a World Finals contender. He's playing some of the best Clash Royale we've seen from him in the last 2-3 years, and I'm really excited to see what he does in Helsinki.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm really enjoying the gameplay that we're seeing out of Reuben right now. It feels like he's back in fighting form. You know, you look there, even at the end of that game, he sends in the miner right to the Executioner's, oh no, what was it called? Boomerax.
Boomerax.
Right in the line of it was already attacking the Lava Hound, but the miner goes right into the front of it. And you would think, okay, well, maybe the miner should go to the back of the Exy, right? That way it's not taking the splash damage, then can maybe get on top of tower. But the miner going to the front made it so it can get NATO'd to king. You know, it's just all these small little decisions that I'm watching Reuben make that just feel like he's just feeling it. He's vibing again. And that's exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of this show. You know, we got some of the best players in the world, some of them getting ready for World Finals, others getting ready for 2024. And right now, right here, today, we're seeing that they feel that pressure by the gameplay we're seeing. Let's take a look at the bracket here. Catch you guys up before we go to a break in just a little bit. Rich, we got our Final Four.
And this is a great Final Four here, too. I do think we have a bit of an error there. I think it's meant to be Inil in that bracket spot instead of Assaf, but we'll get that one corrected for you. So Mohamed Light, our defending, we have two former world champions in Mohamed Light and Reuben, and then we have Inil and Clown, two of the players who came the closest to making World Finals this year while falling just a hair short. And I know both of them would love to kind of put a stamp on this one, take a little extra cash home, but they both have very difficult jobs in front of them with Mohamed Light and Reuben as their opponents.
Yeah, really, really excited to see this shakedown. Just as you said, man, all four of them could have just as easily been at World Finals as they just missed it. So here we go. 2 world champions, 2 world finalists, and 4 of the best players here in Clash Royale. Do not move a muscle. We're going to take a short break and be right back for our final few matches of the day.
Yeah. welcome back, folks, to the Final Four here at our qualifier, our not last chance qualifier, our last full qualifier. More on that LCQ for you a little bit later. We had 16, single elimination. Now we are down to a top 4, Andrew, and it is a phenomenal top 4 today.
Yes, I am so excited to see all 4 of these players that we talked about. Inthrill and Clown just barely missing World Finals, and then on their other side of it, their opponents, 2 world champions, Mo, obviously, and of course, Reuben back with Team Queso. But Rich, we have got a fun update from our producer, and you are smart enough to break it down, whereas I just listened and smiled. Talk to us about what's going on between Reuben and Sandbox right now.
Yes, let's take a look at our standings. Reuben and Sandbox both have 11 points. Remember, the top 6 get that points qualification to our final. Reuben currently has the tiebreaker on Sandbox. The first tiebreaker would have been head-to-head, but they never played head-to-head this season. So the second tiebreaker is game win percentage in the bracket stage. Currently, Reuben has the better game win percentage than Sandbox, but he not only has to play the semifinal, he also has to play either the grand final or the third place match. So if Reuben, for example, goes 0-2 in the semifinal and then 0-2 again in the third place match, it's possible his win percentage could drop low enough for Sandbox to leapfrog him based on that tiebreaker. So Reuben needs to get a little bit more done here to secure that top 6 spot and prevent Sandbox from, without any work done on this Sunday, going back over him again.
Yeah, I was just going to say a lot of people's fates in the hands of Reuben and how he plays today. But if you just saw that set, he does look like a scary, scary man. And, you know, no shot to Aaza here, but it does feel like his competition is going to step up just a little bit as he moves on to Clown. But that's going to be our second match here of our semis. We have to go to Mohamed Light and Inthrill. And both these guys have looked really, really dangerous all day today and most of the year. Obviously, Mo having a little bit more success. Rich, it's so hard to even say anymore what you need to do to beat Mohamed Light, so I'm not going to do that to you because I don't think anyone really knows. But talk to me a little bit just about Inthrill. And I mean, do you think he's a guy that last year I kept talking about, you know, 2023 felt like the year. Do you think 2024, just because he was so close, do you think he is like a shoo-in, it feels like, with World Finals at that point because of the way he's been progressing? Or do you think it's still just too much to be told? There's a whole nother year ahead.
You know, when you have 16 spots for World Finals, and with our format this last year, we had 7 golden ticket spots, 7 point spots, and then 2 for the Chinese players. You're talking about a lot of ways to get there, but very difficult ways. Winning a golden ticket is super crazy hard to do. That's why that's why you only have 7 people who've gotten them, and why most of them got their golden ticket from Mohamed Light to a certain degree. Making those top points consistently. If you look at what Inthrill did this year, he made the round robin stage 3 times. He got second in his group once, he got last in his group once. You have to get through so much just to make the round robin. So Inthrill did just about everything he could and didn't quite make it on points. Did just about everything he could and didn't quite make it on golden ticket. Shoe in for next year? I wouldn't call it that. But certainly a person that everyone's going to have to keep their eye on in 2024? Absolutely.
So here we go, Mohamed Light opening things with what most likely is Graveyard. I mean, that's where we've seen Tombstone show up. It's been this Knight Executioner deck with GY. We'll see if that's what he's going to, but it has been kind of back to the way it used to be when we would see Tombstone. You're just like, okay, this is going to be Splash Yard. Or I guess there was those weird lava decks with Tombstone as well.
And here we go with the Phoenix, who I love that we see so much less of now, just due to the sound.
Just for the sound. Yeah.
Just for the sound. And Lightning in this matchup, that's going to be phenomenal for Mohamed Light against that Archer Queen.
So is this RG then? And then we see an E-Giant come out, which, again, shout out to Juicy J, our friend and fellow caster. A big fan of E-Giant. Is it back in the meta? Not quite, but he's trying. He's trying really hard.
And this E-Giant choice here, not going to get really anything out of it. Dark Prince should not connect. And so far, so good for Mohamed Light, able to shut it down fairly easily. And having the Knight and the Baby Dragon, having the Knight, Baby Dragon, and the Phoenix all as responses to get the damage on that Electro Giant are going to be really nice. And then you add in this really interesting dynamic, right, where the Lightning is so good against the Archer Queen, but so bad against the Dark Prince and the Evolved Knight. I'm very curious to see how that dynamic plays out.
Shout out to Soheil in the chat for the first time. Glad you're here. Stick around. You're going to see some good Clash Royale.
Giant sets up Electro Giant in the back one more time, and now Mohamed Light goes with the same thing.
This is one of my favorite things about Clash Royale. It's like you don't see anything played for like months, and then all of a sudden in one game they're both playing a win condition that has been completely dead. You love to see it. And honestly, two buildings that have been pretty dead until recently.
Yeah, I mean, Cannon in particular. The Cannon was the building for so long.
It was the only building, it felt like,
right?
for months, yeah.
And then, yeah, I don't know the last time I saw, I'm sure I have. I can't remember actively the last time I saw Cannon in competitive play.
So as the cards kind of unfolded, I really just stopped guessing because I didn't know. When, the Phoenix and the Lightning, really threw off what it could have been RG. It threw off, the Tombstone throwing off things, and it was just like, oh yeah, this is a deck. This is what it used to look like, right? As an E-Giant with a Tombstone, you have NATO in there. It used to be, Golden Knight, but instead, why not go for the Evo Knight? Feels like he's stronger at the moment. So, and the Lightning. So Lightning in both directions. Obviously, the Lightning of Mohamed Light is going to be a bit more impactful just because of the AQ. But Inthrill's still happy to Lightning an E-Giant, a Phoenix, and a Baby Dragon all together. So let's see how this goes.
Yeah, and keep an eye on Inthrill when we get into the weeds here at Triple Elixir. The placement of Archer Queen versus that Cannon, not wanting to give value to both of those together. And I don't think there's any reason to play a Lightning here, and that's why Inthrill's happy to do it. But that could get interesting as we get into this final 90.
Yeah, it was a nice bar barrel there from Inthrill to get on top of that Tombstone. Mo had to spend the extra Knight to kind of keep the Tombstone on the board long enough to distract the E-Giant. AQ connects on the right-hand side as this E-Giant should tickle the tower just a little bit down to 2607. No, 2479. I forget how quick that stacks up.
Tickle the tower is such a wonderful way to describe that. I don't know if I've heard you say that, and now it's all I want to hear.
Well, got to keep it fresh after all this time.
So look at that. Mo started to go
Yeah.
for Lightning Cycle, kind of recognizing he's unlikely to break through here. Immediately, of course, the Archer Queen comes out and has some protection. And back to Cannon one more time for Inthrill. Mohamed has to be careful here. He's going to give up a little bit of damage on the left-hand side. Or
When Inthrill is back to...
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think Inthrill is back to another Electro Giant, but now Mo is back to another Lightning, so very, very interesting. So there's the E-Giant, 2479, and I agree, Rich. I think you calling that Lightning Cycle is what Mo recognizes as what needs to kind of be his win condition.
Yeah, no, he again, some of what makes or breaks your Clash Royale is who recognizes the way to win earlier. And in this matchup, which is very similar, very close to a mirror matchup. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, will it? And it does by just a little bit. Mohamed Light gets ahead, but Inthrill able to take advantage of that last little bit of missing elixir, and kaboom! Takes that left-hand tower. I really should not talk at all in the last 20 seconds of Mohamed Light match this week.
Wow, yeah, that E-Giant just again with 1 HP gets on the tower. I mean, that's like 5 shots total of that E-Giant with 1 HP over the last couple minutes. Mohamed Light must feel robbed. And then you look at the numbers, and it feels like Mohamed Light has to feel even more robbed. The Lightning just having so many more options, the value, right? Even if you're just getting the AQ and the Princess Tower, that is exponentially more value than what Inthrill was able to get out of his Lightning. You see, using it 2 less times, and one of those times was in the final seconds to get more damage on. So really, really well played there by both those guys. And that is a tough matchup. That is really much more of a chess game than a checkers game when you have those 2 E-Giant decks going up against each other.
I thinking about this, I think that Mo made the right call, getting involved in the Lightning Cycle early, right? I think that he recognized that and just got caught. We don't have replay today, unfortunately. We can't go break down those last few moments, but got caught slipping just a little bit there at the end. And that the interesting part about the final moments of a matchup like that one is you got to keep everything together for every last moment, and just great recognition by Inthrill of, hey, Mo figured out the only way he wins this is by Lightning Cycle. Well, I figured out the only way I win this is by breaking through in those final moments.
And I felt like Inil did a really good job of making Mo defend uncomfortably just by the bar barrel. The bar barrel seeking out those tombstones, it always made Mo just spend a little bit more, maybe a little higher than he would have liked. And the fact that Inil never gave up on that, it's kind of like when you see someone pre-log and it hits, and then they kind of stop pre-logging because they don't think their opponent's going to let them do that again. But Inil just never gave up on it. He goes, this is one thing that's annoying. And that's what a lot of the best players do. We talked about it earlier with the skeleton dragons, Rich. Same thing. If you find something that's really annoying to your opponent, you got to just really just abuse that card. And even though it seems really small, obviously barbell to the tombstone, I do that all the time. Inil doing that and then continuing to evolve his pushes. Really exceptional gameplay here. And now Mohamed Light facing elimination.
And he will still have the third place match for money and points, but yes, definitely back against the wall here. And I saw earlier a note from Fahad Khan in the YouTube chat that Mo would have won by 3 HP if he'd used that last lightning against the troops that defend rather than on the tower. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's sometimes doing that math in real time is very difficult to do, and we have the benefit of hindsight. Either way, here we are.
Shout out to Fahad. Thanks for doing that math for us, man. That's a tough one. That's a tough one, especially because you know if he's on the call with his coach too, they're both trying to figure out that math in those final seconds.
Yeah, right. That's and there's so many factors you don't know in that moment, right? Like I don't remember when Inil used the NATO, but the NATO could have made up the difference of that 3 elixir. So there's just a myriad of factors. But here we have game number 2 in front of us. And no surprises, Mo going to the Hog Rider with Tornado and Cannon both out, especially Tornado. Inil trying to shut that down with Snowball and the Ram Rider.
Yeah, Mo, they both have their difficulties, right? That Snowball Ram Rider combo, or even if they're not comboed together, is always going to slow that Hog down quite a bit. Mo, though, having the Valkyrie instead of the Knight because he uses it earlier, maybe opting to save the Knight for game number 3 if he gets there. Valkyrie going to do a good job against these recruits.
Yeah, and the rise of recruits is certainly one of the reasons why we're seeing more Valkyrie, right? The ability for her to pull all those together and then 360 get on all of those. Definitely one of the, between that and Barbs, too. I haven't really thought much about the Knight, the Valkyrie versus Evo Barbs, but you have some swarmy troops that are really popular right now, especially being Evos. Makes sense. And here we go, and this is, again, the Firecracker. We've seen non-Evo Firecracker run today. What a Ram Rider connection. She just does that. Yeah. We've seen non-Evo Firecracker run today, and every time I see the Evo Firecracker, I'm like, why would you ever run it without the evolution?
Man, and Mohamed Light just back-to-back aggressive Hog plus Firecracker pushes at the bridge and just gets so much value out of both of them. The first one, the Ram Rider cycled in the back, so it's a little bit more obvious. That second one, even though it's a fresh cycle, Mo still just does the exact same thing and gets a ton of value once again. So really, really well played there by the defending world champ. 346 to 2166, most likely going to go to a game number 3.
A little early with the delivery on the right-hand side was Mohamed, maybe thinking that the Skeleton Dragons would come forward a bit more, as I think it was his Ice Spirit would go down faster. It didn't, but it shouldn't be a problem either way. 139, just back to one more Fireball. We should be going to game 3 here momentarily.
Yeah, and I like what Mo did with this deck. It's really unique, Rich. He uses the Evoed Firecracker, something that you've been talking about a lot today, but when you look at the rest of the cards around it, goes with Valkyrie, Delivery, Fireball. So maybe really thinking about the idea that he could run into recruits. You've got so many great opportunities to get on, and whatever version it might be, right? If it's recruits with Skeleton Dragons, recruits with Flying Machine, recruits here if we're seeing with Ram Rider, that Valkyrie, Ice Spirit, Firecracker, Delivery, all that. You have so much splash damage, and I don't think that was a mistake.
Yeah, and we've talked about this earlier before, the Mother Witch situation, right? I saw someone in the YouTube chat saying that Inil has the advantage because of having the Mother Witch versus the Swarm cards of Mohamed Light. But the big difference here is you see the Fireball bait cards, right? You see the Mother Witch and you see the Skeleton Dragons, but they aren't really competing for that Fireball. Because you have other things like you have the Tesla, you have the Ice Spirit, you have the Evo Firecracker rather than the regular Firecracker, and the Delivery. So you have all these other ways where you don't have as much concern right now from you don't have as much concern where the Fireball has to be spread around. Fireball can just ruin that Mother Witch, and then you can control those Skeleton Dragons with other methodologies.
Exactly, and that delivery is a huge part of that, right? Like just being able to, because the Skeleton Dragons aren't really a big threat on the other side of the board. Yes, they're decent defensive cards, but it's really about when they get behind that group of recruits and you have no way to get on top of them. So I think you're exactly right. Mo recognizes early on, okay, I have ways to control other things that are a threat. What's the one card? What's the one thing that can really ruin this matchup for me? Well, as it is many times, the Mother Witch. And, you know, for players out there, we've seen it all day today. If the Mother Witch is on the board, you spend what you have to get it off. That's it, period. She's one of the few cards that are like that. Even I would say more so than a Magic Archer. It felt like Magic Archer was the other one. If it's cycled behind King Tower, just get it off the board. But I think because of the slowed shoot time and the fact that the Magic Archer has to come really close to be a threat, that makes it so you can still use the spell at the bridge and maybe get a little bit more value. Whereas that Mother Witch, she just has to go. So great job there. We are now into game number 3, Inil and Mohamed Light. And Rich, now we get to do our favorite thing, which is go and figure out what on earth could they be playing. As we see here, Inil winning game number 1. The biggest thing, I think, the biggest takeaways from game number 1 is he doesn't have Knight, he doesn't have NATO, and he doesn't have Dark Prince. And you know what? I'll even throw one more piece in with Barb Barrel, just because Barb Barrel is usually with RG, is usually with Graveyard, feels a little bit less enticing because of that. Mo on the other side of it, he's lost the most used building in the game. He doesn't have Tesla. He doesn't have Ice Spirit. And then everything else is kind of, you know, up in the air. No Firecracker, no Hog, but those are used together so often.
I guess my guess is Mo runs something with Miner because NATO is out, and I'm really hoping that Inil has something to counter Miner in his deck, because he played a deck in game number 2 that could kind of had some decent Miner counters, but had really no chance against Hog. Right, and with NATO being out, one of those two is very likely to be played in game number 2. Let's see if he makes does the same math here, and looks like he might be running back the exact same deck in game number 3.
I was just gonna say, I feel like with what's available, he set himself up to just go Minor Poison Control with Xe, and as you can see with the E-Spirit in there, that's probably exactly what it is, right? You know, not going to be Graveyard. You don't want to give King Tower activations away, so you're never going to have E-Spirit in a Graveyard deck. And then with everything else and what we've seen Mo do, this is pretty much on brand for him.
Yeah, and again, this is interesting. I think this deck from Inil has the ability to match up against Miner better, except for the fact that it's this Miner variation, right? So you should. I think that this is also running Bomb Tower as well. So there's going to be a lot of ways to shut down the splash. The big question here is going to be without the same kind of explosion of big spell. And what a change going Royal Giant instead of Ram Rider.
Yeah, or even Wall Breakers or anything that is just less intense than a RG. I love it. It's like the ace up his sleeve, and it actually caught Mo completely off guard, and you understand why. When do you see recruits plus skeleton dragons and goblins with Royal Giant? You love to see it.
And clean little King Tower activation there as well. This just got very difficult for Mohamed Light, between being very far down playing a Miner control deck and having the King Tower activated against this Miner. The math on this one changed quite drastically, and this is one of the interesting features of the Royale Masters version of dual mode, right? Because since Inil lost with this very similar deck, the Ram Rider version, in game number 2, all those cards were still available, so he was able to kind of pull this bait and switch where he lulled Mo into thinking he's against Ram Rider again, and boom, this one big difference. It's going to be RG Fish Boy as opposed to Lumberjack Ram Rider. Takes a big chunk out early.
I just wonder, is this the way to go now? Is this what you do if you want to beat Mohamed Light? And I'm not even saying that he's going to do that, but like, again, give yourself an advantage. Do you front load with what looks like a meta deck, and then you put in one crazy card because Mo and Jebas are that good at recognizing matchup early on? I don't know, but as of right now, it's showing some pretty good success.
I don't know. I think this is it. This is partially that thought and partially a feature of the Masters version of duels, because you can't do this in regular duel mode, right? You can do a meta deck with a key shift in duel mode, which is going to be really fun to see when we have unrestricted duels at World Finals. But this one, where you can run back essentially the same deck because you lost with it and make little changes. This is just. Inil doing a great job taking advantage of the specific Royale Masters format.
Mohamed Light just dropping a minor plus bomb tower there to deal with the Skeleton Dragons and Royal Giant push. Towers fairly even, 1450, 1560, as Inil has a relative counter push coming down the lane. Not huge, but Mother Witch in tow behind this RG, and RG's going to get at least a shot, and there we go. NATO comes down.
And then recruits to keep the Mother Witch up, so piggies come in. This is difficult for Mohamed Light, and he gets a little bit more. No, doesn't get on the right-hand side with the Mother Witch damage, goes to the Xe instead. But triple elixir here, this is not, and Mohamed Light needing to use poison defensively is a huge problem for him.
Well, yeah, and it's like, how are you going to get enough damage? And that's the other thing. I love what Inthral's doing is a lot of times you're like, all right, you need to sit back and defend, but Inthral's just going, I need to do what I've been doing this entire game because Mo has not been able to get damage. And right there, I don't know if I like either of those things. He's giving a lot of poison value and he's cycling his fishermen, so now there's a way for Mo to actually get damage on tower, which is something you never really want to give him the opportunity to do.
Yeah, and this was an interesting calculation here. I don't think the Mo's going to give him any damage on that right-hand side. And now he's able to start doing damage on the left-hand side. Mohamed Light, you saw him play the Knight Xe on the right-hand side, knowing that the only way he wins this is if he defends by the skin of his teeth on the right and is able to put more damage on that left. And right now, I think that he's not going to be able to get it done. 785 on the left-hand lane. He has 2 Xes. That was such a smart try, but couldn't make it happen. Looked to pre-NATO the RG out of the way. Instead, Inil able to distract the Xe perfectly up there at the bridge and take a massive win. Inil going to our grand final here today.
Just such a unique set, and I think that you really kind of hit the nail on the head saying that he took great advantage of the Royale Masters format. What did he learn? What is out of cycle? What can he not use? What does he like to play? What has he been playing today? And how do I abuse that? And I gotta say, that was one of my favorite swerves I've seen in the modern version of Clash Royale competitive, which is in duels format. I mean, like you said, we can't do this in regular. It doesn't make sense to run this deck if you just ran, all the cards right beforehand. You're not going to just come out with this deck in game number 1. So I'm impressed. Hats off.
He slow played it so well.
It was the 6th card played.
Exactly. And he didn't tip the hand with the Fisherman earlier. Right? So both of those came out very late in the matchup. Just a phenomenal way to slow play the situation. And I see some people in the chat kind of calling for Mo to use the Xe NATO combination more to try to get lineups on offense. But there was a problem. The NATO was a key factor in his defense, specifically pulling those Royal Giants back. So Mo was caught in a very difficult position. Inil did a great job of making sure that the fight took place in the middle third of the board, that the bridge was where the fight was happening, as opposed to the fight happening on his towers. He kept poison value off his towers. He kept Xe value off his towers. That was a really phenomenal performance by Inil.
Yeah, that was a fun one, and I'd love to hear Jebas and Mo kind of chit-chat about what that game was like for them on their side of it, but maybe we can get that, maybe not, as we get into our next set here. Reuben and Clown trying to figure out who's going to face Inil in the finals, and Clown already trying to win points with me. We got a mortar connection early on.
A nice mortar connection, and Reuben going back to this 2.9 Hog Cycle deck that he played earlier, so we'll see if he has the same success or similar success. EQ going to be something he's really happy about with this mortar matchup, and this is, again, interesting. Keep in mind, folks, that Reuben currently, due to tiebreakers, is ahead of Sandbox, and if he maintains that position, will qualify on points to our grand final for Royale Masters. But if he O2s, if he loses, if he gets swept twice, that game percentage tiebreaker could drop below Sandbox, and we could see Sandbox leapfrog him back into that spot. So this is still some very important Clash Royale for Reuben.
Man, Reuben has done this again here in this game, where he's just recognizing, I know how to send a hog push early that you cannot defend well. And he was able to get that hog in with the firecracker behind and make it very difficult for Clown to figure out where he wanted to place his troops. Get some good damage out of it, 1734 to 2176. And that was hog plus goblins plus firecracker. And Clown didn't know where to fireball. He obviously has to fireball the hog and the goblins. He missed a goblin, and of course firecracker stays alive. So 1098, 2176. And Reuben has done exactly what you want to do in single elixir rich, which is get a massive lead.
Tesla out to defend against all of this. Reuben just trying to get himself back to more control with the Valkyrie. And this is interesting. This doesn't look like it right out your thought, because we've seen how aggressively Reuben has played the Hogs in this one. But this is a really interesting kind of control-y version. The Valkyrie, she's gonna do so much defensively, pulling all this into the board. And in this current meta, this deck, while it is on paper a cycle deck, you're seeing Reuben play it with a lot more control.
Yeah, and you have to, right? And I think that's one of the things about this deck that maybe even I make, is one of the reasons I struggle with it sometimes, is it's very different. Just that one elixir difference between whether you're going goblins or skellies, or whether you're going Valkyrie or Knight, and the way that you defend and the way that you push. So, Reuben...
Look at this. Reuben just let a goblin gang do whatever it wanted on the right-hand side. He didn't check their IDs. He didn't ask for admission.
No.
He just pulled back the velvet rope and let him in the club. What the heck just happened?
And that was right after skeleton dragons just sat on top of his tower. Those goblins are literally uncontested. It's just a gang, all by itself.
Yeah, now I need to go and... I know we don't have replays, so I need to go ahead and catch up myself.
It's literally just a naked goblin gang at the bridge. There's two skeleton dragons that get a good amount of damage in, honestly, way more than Reuben should have allowed in the previous push. I think he was expecting his Firecracker to do more damage on them, but the tower's at 2176. Okay, it's like near 2000, and those skeleton dragons bring it all the way down to 1200, and then it's just a goblin gang at the bridge.
Wow. He needed to EQ that goblin gang or something. I guess Log was out of cycle already. I'm trying to go back a little bit further. Man,
he EQs low to try to steal the game, and then he still plays a Firecracker high to try to steal the game again. For as much as I've loved what Reuben has done today, Rich, that does make me feel a little uneasy.
Let's see. So he plays a Log on the previous push to wipe off the Skeleton King. So Log is to the back of his hand. Firecracker. Oh, yeah. So Log's out of cycle and just gang push on the right-hand side. And Reuben, I think, maybe thinks he can win the fight. And if he needed to earthquake that goblin gang. That's what he needed to do. He needed to earthquake that goblin gang. Great choice by Clown, aka Kickash, to go in hard on the right-hand side. And maybe the EQ was still a little buried. Either way, just not a great call by Reuben.
He used it right there on offense.
Yeah.
It's just it's so... I'm not looking at my camera. I'm not paying. I can't even form a sentence because it's so odd. That just makes zero sense to me at all. But you know what happens? Sometimes you're not looking at the other side of the board, I guess. And I agree with you. I think he was really trying to steal the game at the end, but there was no reason to even feel the pressure to steal the game. Oh well, here we go, game 2.
Here we go. As you said, oh well.
It's not my money. It's not my points.
No, I'm very happy that it's not my points.
So here we go. We see Tombstone now, and we see Ice Wizard, so it looks like we are going to go to what really was dominating the leaderboards for a while last season, which is, this version of Splash Yard. It is back.
Yeah, I did a fun video with our friend the God RF to break down some Splash Yard concepts. And very curious to see how and if Kickash puts some of those into play here, although Graveyard into a Mother Witch deck is certainly going to be a challenge, if you will.
Yeah, Reuben may be getting a gift here from the Clash Royale gods after a very odd drop in game number 1 after being in a commanding lead. But now having Mother Witch 4 GY is always nice. But the other side of it, you wonder, Kickash, does he just go hyper-aggressive? And there it is. It's just, it's one of the few things in this game that is an if-then situation. If Mother Witch is out of cycle, then I play my Graveyard, period.
And I don't know if that's on my end or your guys' end. I did have, it sounded a little robotic from what I heard from Andrew. So if I don't respond, excuse me, that might be my internet or his. I think I just took a pretty big spike on my end.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was like, well, also I'm using a voice modulator now. So here we go. Monk gonna defend against that Knight as Rich is trying to figure out his internet. I had some struggles earlier on, so the I'm not even gonna call it woes anymore. We've been in the digital era for so long now, and there was still issues in live. So you know what? We'll just call it what it is. It's competitive esports, and there's going to be problems with internet sometimes. So here we go. 24-23, 21-68, now down to 19-61 with that fireball coming in. Clown got some good damage early because that Mother Witch was out of cycle, was able to get a GY in. I think Reuben recognized he was going up against Graveyard, but knew that he was going to be able to defend enough in single. And now you see again, I like this. He goes high with the Mother Witch because there's this firm line set at the bridge. So there's no way Clown goes in for a Graveyard right now. And maybe by the time Clown does go for the GY, then Reuben will be back to another Mother Witch. So here we go. Bridge battle ensuing. And Reuben gonna lose that bridge battle, but Mother Witch is still back in cycle.
And Mother Witch takes care of business, gets some piggies the opposite direction. Very close here at the moment, 1975 to 1961. And again, we talk about spell damage late in game. Clown has 3 ways to get directly on tower. Poison, NATO, and of course Graveyard. Reuben does not have that luxury. I'm very curious about how he plans to get the full breakthrough here. This could be a huge moment, though. NATO has to pull all of this back. Mother Witch going to get involved. Does the Evo RG do anything? It does not.
Yeah, not even really alive long enough to tank for that Mother Witch. So this Mother Witch may be a little bit too aggressive. And now I would love to see a Graveyard as a fireball comes down on the bridge there. Graveyard is in, no tank for it, but that's okay. You got some good poison value there.
Oh, and this Baby Dragon is going to get some splash damage on the tower. I think, no, the Fisherman just barely doesn't step into range. So this continues to stay close, 1674 to 1508. And just trying to keep the Monk on the opposite side is Kickash. Doesn't finally get it done, though. There will be some reflection, but not a ton of reflection. Still the lead for Clown.
So now a couple times we've seen Reuben drop that Mother Witch on top of the tombstone, and then a Barb Barrel comes out. I just want to see him take that one step further. If he's going to continue to commit to that Mother Witch, I want to see the second unit come down to protect her. We'll see if that has any purpose in the rest of this match. There's only 30 seconds remaining. Poison comes down 1284 to 1593. And yeah, Rich, that RG push needs to happen. That point you made about being able to get damage on tower, Clown is having a fun time with that.
And that Fisherman to snipe the Ice Whiz was huge, but I don't know if it's going to matter here. NATO pulls all of this back. I don't think this Royal Giant gets anywhere near the tower, and this might be the problem we were talking about. Oh, can that actually connect? Does not do it. And now Clown goes to our grand final and gives Reuben an 0-2, who has to go face Mohamed Light in the 3rd place match. Sandbox still alive in the hunt for qualifying for finals.
All of the things that could possibly go wrong for Reuben have now just happened. He's got 0-2 in the set. Sandbox is back in contention. He has to go to the 3rd place match against Inthrill, and against Mohamed Light. And I gotta tell you, after the sets we just saw, my money, and honestly usually is always going to be on Mohamed Light, but Reuben really looked, it's hard to even say out of sorts because he was so good throughout the entire rest of the day, but just that one Goblin Gang at the bridge being ignored, it's amazing what that can do to make my confidence in him just go from 100 to 0.
Andrew, I want to ask you a question. What are the 3 win conditions that Reuben is known for playing?
Well, Royal Giant is definitely one of them.
Yeah, we saw him play Hog Rider and then Balloon.
I was just gonna say Hog, and then yeah, the only other one is that Loon. Is it still viable? But yeah, the 2 that we've seen, right? Hog Rider and Royal Giant.
So come on. This has been the knock on Reuben since we got into solo competition, right? Reuben continuing to lean on these win conditions he's known for playing so much. You played what could have been a win in game number 1 and just got caught flat-footed and completely knocked over by that Goblin Gang. And then on tilt in game number 2, going to Royal Giant, in my opinion, was just a brutally bad call. You have to go with something that you're not known explicitly for playing there. You have to make an anti-tilt move. You made a tilt move, and you got caught one more time, and Inthrill just executed brilliantly.
Yeah, and I've seen, for as much as we've seen Splash Yard in the competitive scene outside of the actual broadcast, like we're seeing it, it's just one of those things that's just, it's so easy, right? If you're going to go up against RG, my Splash Yard deck, if I can just defend, I can do this. I can just poison out and wins. Let's take a look here at the bracket to catch you guys up with where we are today. A very, very interesting semifinals, right? I think Inil taking out Mo 2-1 with that surprise deck in game number 3. It left us kind of speechless. And then similarly, game number 1, Reuben not defending 2 skeleton dragons and then 6 goblins, drops a tower and gets both those world champions to our 3rd place match. So that's where we're going to be going next. Mohamed Light and Reuben in a best of 3 for 3rd place. And then as you guys see right there at the top, Inil and Clown. Back in a best of 5 situation is Clown, where we saw him beat Mohamed Light in our first week of qualifiers here at Royale Masters, which is such a great time for me to tell you guys to join in with Royale Masters.
Yes.
We already saw it. We got our obligatory, I'm better than these guys. Why are they playing that deck? So go sign up. Go follow Royale Masters on Twitter. Join the Discord and get yourself in that last chance qualifier. Still 2 more people from next weekend, I believe, will be able to go on through to our playoffs and compete for that big chunk of cash, which Royale Masters loves to put up that big check. So Rich, here we go. Not what we expected in our 3rd or grand finals. At least I don't think that's what we expected.
I mean, look, I think that the most important things to keep in mind as we talk about what this Final Four looked like was that you have 2 very light. We talked about this before we started, right? Inil and Clown are 2 of the players who came the closest to making World Finals without getting that one. Literally, just I think Clown needed to win 5 more total games this whole season to have been in the points in the point situation, and Inil made it 3rd to when 2nd place got the golden ticket. When Vitor was able to get the golden ticket there, so both games. These were not unknown nobodies. These were absolutely live underdogs playing in a slightly different format, and Inil took total advantage of it and pulled one of the most fun fast ones I think I've seen in a while on here.
Oh yeah.
And then Clown he capitalized on just some maybe lackadaisical decision making on the side of Reuben and put himself into the finals. I think that this could have gone any of the combinations, right? It could have been there is no combination here that would have completely shocked me. I do have to take some credit for another very sorry brutal caster curse on Mo here. I probably shouldn't cast him at all at Worlds. I'll let you guys do those ones. But yeah, and then we still get 2 really fun matches that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and I still can never let this go when you say it. It's just the 5 games. 5 games throughout the whole year. I mean, that's 25 minutes at most of Clash Royale over an entire season. And anyway, we're seeing right now why it just makes these guys that much hungrier. Both the guys that were almost at World Finals in our finals and the 2 champions now in our 3rd place match. We'll be getting to that in just one moment, giving Reuben a moment to reset. I'm sure Mohamed Light took his time during that last set to reset after a really impressive win there from Inil. I mean, not only do I love the idea that he did it, but he had the guts to do it against the best in the world, right? I mean, that's a really, really heavy deck. And you are, like you said, Rich, you're hiding the Royal Giant, you're hiding the Fisherman. The ability to do kind of all of that and catch the best team in the world. I mean, that's really what it is, a team behind Mohamed Light, off guard. It's pretty fun to see, and I think that's something that a lot of these players can maybe think about. It's like you said, it is really more of a result of the Royale Masters format, but I don't know, maybe you can take that idea and kind of run with it when you get to Worlds.
Yeah, there's certainly some concepts there. I mean, look, last year we saw at Worlds, there were some challenges there, but we saw the lava hog attempt out of Doom at Worlds last year, right? We saw some players pull some interesting things, and one of the things excited about CRL Worlds compared to our monthly finals is our monthly finals were still played in the in-game duel mode where you pre-build 4 decks, whereas World Finals are played unrestricted. So players can make complete adjustments from game 1 to game 2 to game 3, which I'm really, really pumped about, and I can't wait to see what they do when they actually get to that point.
Oh, I know. I mean, that's something that you and I talked about last year, too, which is just like, I would love to be a fly on the wall during that conversation that they're having in that quick, however long they're going to get at Worlds, which is not going to be a lot of time. I mean, it's not going to be as fast as, like you said, in-game duels, but just being able to listen to that conversation, it would just be such a cool look into the greatest minds that do play this game. So as you guys are probably wondering why we haven't gotten the match started, quit yapping, which also, who even says that to adults as an adult anymore? Quit yapping? What is this, like 1945? Anyway, That being said, we are just waiting for the players to get ready, so I'll just do it one more time. Go follow everything on Royal Masters, right? Go join up. There's still that opportunity to get in the last chance qualifier, join the Discord, and as Rich said, there's many events that happen all year long with Royal Masters. I'm assuming 2024 will be the same, so make sure you can get your opportunity in there. I saw someone else in the chat here that said, yeah, Josh, just won my first grand challenge. Congratulations, man.
Nice.
That is a tough thing to do. Props to you. And if you're still listening, tell us what deck you did it with. Be fun to hear that. Otherwise, we're just kind of hanging out. There it is. Stop yapping. Love it. Love to see it. Thank you, Grandma.
And as a quick note for the Last Chance Qualifier, which is coming up very soon, the LCQ has nothing to do with these points. So for our Last Chance Qualifier, it will just be the top 2 players at the end of the bracket qualify in. So if you're watching right now, you can qualify next at the LCQ. You can make it. You don't have to compete against the guys who've been doing it all season. Just go in and make top 2. GG, well played. You are in.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you want, right? So many times you hear people complain about single elimination. You know, it's really rough in these tournaments. Well, in a Last Chance Qualifier, you love that. You love that single elimination top 2 get through. That's the best opportunity for whoever you are at home to get in without being a name, without having a team, without even having a grand challenge finish. So here we go. 3rd place match coming your way. 2 world champions here. Mohamed Light and Reuben both going to be at world finals this year as well. Let's see if Reuben is able to bounce back after a, like you said, Rich, a very tilting set.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. And I don't really understand the Royal Giant pick unless that's what we're talking about.
So Reuben going right back to the Mother Witch, and Zappies might just be running back the same deck we just saw.
Okay. Do you? Yeah, you know what? Reuben won a world championship and I didn't, so, do you. But I do. And, look, here's the other thing to keep in mind, is we are in the middle of October. We're not that far away from World Finals. And while getting some money at Royale Masters is nice, not blowing through decks that you're planning on using for World Finals might be the better call. It looks like he's not going Royal Giant here, I don't think. But I would not be surprised to see these players experimenting and doing some stuff that maybe they don't plan on doing at Worlds, because that's way more important when you talk about the amount of money that they're going to be trying to get there.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like our meta is pretty much set, it feels, for Worlds, so I think that's a really good call that you make. We see the Barbs come out with the Skeleton Dragons, and the Barb Barrel could be Lava initially, but then you're like, well, I don't know, has Lava really played that much with those cards? Kind of, but this deck is. This Golem deck has been everywhere. It's really, really strong. It doesn't have a big spell, but it doesn't really matter because that Golem Burst with the E-Dragon and the NATO is usually more than enough to take care of defending troops, and there you go. This is a really easy NATO for Mo to pull off if that's what he wants to do.
Oh, that's a good Monk High to try to control this. It does get into the ability. It won't reflect the E-Drag because that is a lightning bolt rather than a projectile, so no reflection there. But one of the really hard parts about this matchup for Reuben, amongst the many hard parts about it, is he has a fireball that he would love to hit the pumps, but he can't spend it on the pumps because that's 4 elixir that doesn't do anything about all those things. And this is looking like it's going from bad to worse for Reuben.
Yeah, I mean, that Fisherman just having to be used to stop the Barbarians that still got an insane amount of damage on the left-hand side. There's no King Tower activation, and then you add all that together with a very high Monk, high Zappies, and a Desperation high Tombstone. At that point, you are literally just feeding your opponent elixir. Like, that is the only term you can use, is feeding.
Oh boy. Well, this gets very interesting, because again, this is all about, can Reuben get enough, maintain his game win percentage enough to maintain the tiebreaker over Sandbox, and now that is in tremendous jeopardy.
I mean, yeah, for how well this day started for Reuben, it has gone catastrophic here at the end. Now 0-3 in his last 2 sets, now looking to not get swept by Mohamed Light. And I don't know if that 3 it's not enough, right? Was it if he lost 3, Sandbox was already in, or is it if he lost 4
I think,
in a row?
Well, it's percentage, right? So I think that if Reuben can win these 2 games, that he'll be able to protect that. I don't have the exact game win percentages in front of me, unfortunately. I'm trying to track those down right now. But and it's only game win percentage in the single elimination bracket phase. So that gets even more complicated here. Reuben was in pretty good shape, but this might be a do or die game for the former world champion.
I mean, this is another situation of kind of what you mentioned, Rich, at the end of that last set, which is, what is Reuben known for? And, he went right back to Royal Giant, and Mohamed Light put himself in like a 60-40 plus matchup. That's just not what you want to be in. I mean, the exact match, there's only one instance. It's 100% to 0, so that's not really it. But if you look at probably 7 or more, it says 60-40. So that means if there's more at the 8, I bet you it's even higher than that. I bet it's even maybe closer to 65-35 or 70-30, because all the things you were talking about, that fireball needs to be used on the pump, but there's just no way to get on top of those skeleton dragons plus E-Drag. I mean, there's literally no way. It's Zappy's Mother Witcher Fireball, but if you've got a golem in front, they can't get through. That's why you have to drop them up high. So Mo Light putting himself in a great matchup in game number 1. Reuben now going to what looks like Splash Yard here in game number 2.
And still working on drawing those percentages for you. We will have, the tiebreaker will be shown when we actually get to look at our final leaderboard. But man, I have to imagine that the stress level, I don't know if Reuben even is currently aware of that stress level situation, but certainly happy to have NATO against a Hog deck here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Splash Yard against Hog is a pretty tough spot to be in, but this is a different version of Hog. I mean, the ability to get the recruits down to kind of control up high or down low, and then you still have the Goblins and Hog Rider to kind of distract at the bridge if you need. But I'll say this, when I play Hog, I don't really love running into Splash Yard. The NATO and the Ice Whiz and the Tombstone just become really difficult.
Yeah, this will be interesting. He does have I think one of the big questions for Mohamed Light will be how much can he keep poisons off his tower, especially during graveyard pushes. Yep. So here he's going to give away some value onto he's going to have to do this a couple of times, give away some value with those muskies, but really he just wants to do his best to defend these graveyards and not give spell value at the same time.
Yeah, and Reuben just needs to not get ahead of himself and just recognize the fact that, like, look, I should be able to control this game pretty well. He's going to have to give up poison value here and there, so let's just slow play this. I mean, that's the name of the game with Graveyard, is just slow things down and control that board. So Musketeer out of cycle, Goblins available, decent counter push coming across, high recruits, and then just pause here if you're Reuben.
So a little confirmation from the booth here. Sandbox has a 71% game win rate. If Reuben loses this game, he will drop to a 66% game win rate. So it's really just down to this game. If he loses this match 1-2, he'd have 83% and be in. So this game decides whether it's Reuben or Sandbox through on points.
And there you go, Mo doing exactly what you want. Goblins down low, baiting out the poison, not where your opponent is using it offensively, where they're using it defensively. Then you get kind of aggressive, so your opponent is spending down lower, so they don't have as much to stack up at the bridge battle.
I'm a little surprised by hog shots coming in right now, but Reuben a little bit low on Elixir. Interesting for Mohamed Light that, you're running this Fireball version, that you want to get value on the Ice Whiz for sure, but you also want to get spell value on Tower. And I'm going to be very curious to see how much you can actually get Fireballs onto that right-hand tower as we get later in game.
Love to see a Musketeer here on the left-hand side. No, goes recruits instead, but yeah, changing lanes is not a thing that you want to avoid if you're Mohamed Light, right? Hog Rider always needs to be able to switch lanes, and right now, as you just saw in that last push, with the lead shifting in favor of Reuben, that I don't think he's going to be able to create enough offensive pressure and then defend adequately, but it looks like Mo's kind of committed. Fireball goes in on that right-hand tower, does get on top of that Baby Dragon. 1 minute remaining, and it really does feel like this is a right tower conversation.
Yeah, and you see Reuben keep cycling the Ice Whiz to the left-hand side, just wanting Mo to spend the Fireball over there and not have it either to win bridge fights or to get value on tower. And Mo doesn't even get value here. He just goes straight up, cycles the Fireball on tower for damage, and he's going to let himself eat a lot from the Baby Dragon on the left.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to survive throughout this one, Rich. I mean, Reuben did exactly what he needed to do, which was just kind of slow down. And honestly, the break that we took, the time that it took for him to reset, it feels like he was able to find his bearings once again.
Goblins trying to defend against the Graveyard Bomb Tower is helping. With 12 seconds left, Mo needs to break through with the Hog, but there's the NATO. Can a Hog come in behind one more time? Fireball trying to get the Knight off the board. The recruits do not retarget. Hog cannot get there in time, and Reuben keeps this set going, but more importantly, does secure his spot in the top 6 and will be going to our finals with that tiebreaker over Sandbox.
It was a battle. It definitely was a battle, but he is able to make it on through. And, you know, this is another part of being one of the best in the world, right? You got to be able to bounce back. You know, World Finals is double elimination. Here, this is a third place match. It's single elimination. The pressure is obviously different, but still the mindset is the same. And Reuben was able to pause. I like the deck decision, right? You know, he really slowed it down with Splash Yard. It's incredibly defensive. We found himself just not defending the way that he is known to do when he was dropping those last few games. So there we go, a bit of a change, not one of his known win conditions. Now the conversation does go back to Rich of how does Reuben stay unpredictable here now that he has used Splash Yard? Does he just go right back to Hog? Does he go right back to Royal Giant? And I hope he doesn't, truly.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is, NATO's out, so it makes him feel like Hog might be a good option here. My guess is that Mo tries to come up with something to snipe Hog and maybe even snipe Balloon. I would not be surprised to see Mohamed Light run something with Inferno Tower in here. It would cover some of RG, it would cover some of Hog, it would cover kind of the 3 bases that Reuben is known for. So I'm very curious. Look, NATO out, Lumberjack out, the Electro Dragon out. Man, I'm trying to think of like what might be the right move for Reuben here, and we might be getting a little correction here on the numbers for the leaderboard. So hold your horses, folks, on who's in and who's out. But what we do have is game number 3.
Mr. Monther asking, can Reuben play RG now? He has it in the deck, but he didn't play it. Yes, he could have played it. This is RoyaleMSTRS format, so you know if you lose with a deck, you can run it right back, but you know, sometimes your opponent just doesn't give you a good opportunity to play your win condition, or sometimes the matchup, it's ill-advised. I think in that situation in game number 1, it was just things went really bad for Reuben very quickly.
Reuben going Miner here, and with NATO out, Miner's a good call, and it's not one of the big 3 that Reuben runs. I like this call out of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is still a really, really great deck, still very viable. And it's not as obvious as what we've seen him do for most of today. And
now with Reuben not having NATO, Mohamed Light goes to this. This is the second time seeing this today. This variation of the Luminary deck, but with Hog as opposed to Minor Wall Breakers. Very interesting choice.
This is a scary deck to play up against if you're Reuben right now. The ability that Firecracker has to just ruin so many things when you talk about the bats and the spears and the wall breakers kind of getting caught in that sparkle. It's just, it's trouble. So yeah, you can see there Reuben just gonna seek it out every single time. And then of course you have a really good way to deal with the recruits with the Royal Ghost and with the MK.
And I want to point out here, this is going to end up with a wall breaker connection, but also a dangerous counter push. Mohamed Light, instead of trying to make sure you get maximum value by making the Mega Knight jump onto the recruits with his shields, using the Mega Knight to pull everything to the middle, be more tanky, and handle both sides of both lanes, that's a more veteran move versus a more amateur move.
Absolutely, and that's a great thing to point out. It is a hard thing to give up an MK jumping on top of a swarm of units, but he's a brawler. He splashes, get him to the center. He can help both sides, like you said, Rich, and then you're finding yourself at an even trade, which is also the most important part. And misses the Hog pull with the bomb tower and allows the Firecracker to pierce on through the tower. And honestly, that should be enough already. Down to 935, but 2170 remains for Mohamed Light as his weakest tower, and a cycled Fireball, no problem.
Sets up the Evo recruits in the back. 30 seconds left in regulation time. Reuben eyeing that 728 on the right-hand side and hoping he can get something done before that becomes a problem. Does not get onto the Firecracker. The Miner goes to the tower instead, and the Firecracker's staying up for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, you understand, I guess, the idea of trying to get a little fancy, but you got to just take care of that Firecracker. She just completely ruined your entire push, and as she's going to continue to do. And there you see Mohamed Light dropping the Firecracker a little bit higher than he would have liked, but still going to be able to protect it with the Prince.
Smart log here out of Reuben, minute 46 left. The bridge spam pressure here is really nasty. Miner has to come out on defense, and Bomb Tower in the middle here to hold on to this Hog Rider, but Reuben, because of the arrows, just has not been able to find a way to weave those wall breakers through the mess. I don't think he's going to win one here, Andrew, just off a Miner chip.
I definitely agree with you. I think that Miner chip is not going to be enough, and there's a lot of ways to get on top of that Miner. This is, this is a better situation in terms of the MK only being in one lane, but that Evo'd Firecracker, she's just such a nuisance, and because she is such a problem, that means that the bats pretty much go unchecked, Rich, because you have to deal with the Firecracker with the Fireball.
Oh, and a late Bomb Tower hog shot in, and arrows
and that's also
not even needed.
Yeah, and that's also a situation where now Mo can go aggressive Firecracker at the bridge, so Reuben has to think about that as well as defending this left-hand side.
And that's just one cycle away from getting this one all finished. Reuben goes high with the Hog Rider, the arrows in, wallbreaker connection doesn't even matter. Or Mohamed goes in high with the play, and there you go, GG, well played. Mohamed Light getting that third place finish.
Yeah, and I think that this is a moment where if you're Reuben, you've got time. You've got a 6 weeks or so to get ready for World Finals, and I don't know if it's just grinding. I don't know if he needs to maybe look at more support staff. But when you looked at what he did in those final 2 sets against guys that are world-class players, he just didn't look like he did earlier in the day.
Yeah, that's fair. It was I think it's a very fair assessment of what we saw out of Reuben in the second half. He looked phenomenal early and a little challenged later on. And Mohamed Light just once again making good deck choices here in this matchup against Reuben. And we saw a little back and forth here, but in the end, the most important thing in the immediacy, Andrew, is Reuben able to get at least the 1 out of those 4 games won, and taking himself on to our next phase.
Yeah, so not a full loss for the world champion, as we will be back with Reuben in just a couple of weeks when we have our Royal Masters Grand Finals. Of course, if you're in the Discord or on the Twitter, you'll probably be able to see when exactly that is, but I know we're excited for it and a lot of money on the line. But here we go. We have our finals. We got one more match left today, Rich. It is the fun possibility of getting to game number 5. And I think that what I really love about this is we have one player that's done it recently to success against the best in the world in Clown, beating Mohamed Light in finals in our first qualifier. And then you have someone like Inil, who did some really cool, innovative stuff, kind of not abusing, but really utilizing the Royal Masters duel format. So we have 2 different stories coming into this best of 5, but really only one way to find out who's going to come out on top. And I'm excited. The best of 5s are always really, really fun. I think, did we go... I can't remember if we went to game 4 last time.
I think it was game 4 last time.
Yeah, and then game 5 the first time. So who knows what we'll get. We have yet to see a sweep. And that, again, I think is part of why the Royal Masters duel format is so fun.
Yeah, it really is. It really is tremendous, and the big opportunity for the player falling behind to come back. We talked about this earlier. We have the ability. We can go to best of 5. You only lose decks when you win with them. So hey, if you go down 0-2 to start, your opponent's playing with 16 cards out, and you with everything. And so that's where we're going to see some true depth of the analysis, right? Can you really take advantage of it when you are down? At some point, someone's going to be down either 2-0 or 2-1. That's just going to happen at some point. So are you able to capitalize there when your opponent is hamstrung like that? That'll tell us a lot about how well you succeed in this format.
Yeah, and I think another thing to add about both these guys is that they have shown a great deck pool.
over time. Both of them really have,
true.
And I'd say even Clown maybe takes the edge a little bit just because I've been seeing him more recently, and it's hard for me to say what he likes to play because he plays so many things so well. But Inthrill has been a guy that has been able to play a lot of win conditions. It seems like he's a guy that's kind of put in the work as the meta has evolved and as the competitive meta has evolved. He's always kind of kept with it and gone with the flow, as opposed to, people that we love to watch and talk about, like Sweep, for instance, who goes very much against the flow, or he takes something that's kind of on meta and changes a couple things. So here we go. Best of 5 for the final qualifier here at Royale Masters. Of course, there is the LCQ, but as Rich mentioned, that is no points, no holds barred, just top 2 go through.
That last chance qualifier will be the weekend of October 21st and 22nd, so not far off from now. And then, of course, in the middle of that week, we'll have King of the Hill, our last edition here in October. The playoffs for this event, end of October, the 28th, 29th, and then the King of Kings in December after World Finals.
I forgot about the King of Kings. That's going to be fun.
And spammy is Inthrill here, going opposite lane of the Lava Hound and getting some good damage to start. But this Inferno Dragon will take care of business, and just trying to see if he can get the tower trade here. I don't know if it's going to work out well for Clown.
Yeah, I think the initial thought process there for Inthrill was exactly on point. And you know what? Honestly, I still think it's okay. The Battle Ram, you don't know your opponent has the Tombstone, but you do know your opponent doesn't have Fireball or Barbs back in cycles. So it's not a bad push by any means, but 23-32 now to 16-21. I like the recognition of going Barbs are out of cycle. Let me go heavy here with the Royal Ghost and the Bandit. Worst thing that happens is you bait out a building and then your Battle Ram can connect. So Inthrill up with some great decision making early.
And slowing down a little bit here as these guys set up for the next big exchange, and it's going to be a Loon play rather than getting the Lava Hound ahead.
Yeah, naked Loon, just Barb not even crossing the bridge. Magic Archer is on the board, AQ back in cycles, so I don't know if that was too aggressive because he does get the death damage, but maybe just not what I thought he was going to do.
And this is a nice little tankage by the Lava Hound, right? Just recognizing, hey, it's just not take a ton of Archer Queen damage. I can still get some pressure the opposite direction and force out some responses, as you see here, and keep this one nice and close and not give 2 lane opportunities to my opponent.
Yeah, and the interesting battle on the ground and in the air ensues where you have Clown with obviously just a little bit more weight in the skies. It's kind of difficult for Inthrill to get through, and then similarly as you look here, the ground just being completely dominated by Inthrill.
And Magic Archer is not going to help this push in the middle, so that's going to be absorbed pretty nicely. Dual lane pressure for Inthrill, but now he has to deal with the Barbs to the right, and the Inferno Dragon does a very good job of keeping all of that control for the moment.
Yeah, nice kite there on that Inferno as well. Going to run right into the Archer Queen. Then you get the Magic Archer behind. You don't have to use the ability. You still have the presence on the board. And right now, Inthrill doing a really, really good job. Last second ability, perfect.
That Magic Archer is just hanging.
Yeah, and that's always a problem, Clown does not want to commit the Fireball to it, so now there's a second Magic Archer down on the board. Now he has to go to that Archer farther back, and then right there, Inthrill can just double down on his offensive pushes.
And just
this is trouble.
Yeah, this is a lot here with the Heal Spirit behind. And is there an appropriate spell? No, there isn't. Inthrill taking game number 1 with a big push there at the end.
Yeah, just a really, really good job of making your opponent play really uncomfortably. When you're playing against those Lava Hound decks, obviously having the Archer Queen is going to be super helpful, the Magic Archer on the other side of the board. But otherwise, what is there on the ground for Clown, right? And Inthrill recognized that really early on. He kind of poked and prodded, doing well-calculated plays that he knew at the minimum he was going to get spell response out of it or building response. And he kind of took that idea and just ran with it for the whole rest of the game. When is your ground responses off the board, then I'm going to punish you.
I really like getting the win here with this deck for Inthrill.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
This
Rich.
There's so much in here that doesn't create problems for you deck building otherwise. We talked about that coming from behind capability in the Royale Masters format, but Battle Ram, Magic Archer is still in a couple decks, kind of, but nowhere near the same way. Battle Ram, Heal Spirit, Bandit, those ones, you're talking about 3.5, 4 cards that you're not worried about them limiting you elsewise. And even, to be honest, the Barbs in some way. Right?
Yeah.
There are not a lot of decks that run Barbs that can't run something else entirely. It probably does take Lava off the board for Inthrill, but not necessarily, because there are some non-Barb variations. This is just a really good pick from Inthrill, but more importantly, sets him up very well to still be competitive as we get into the deeper rounds.
And this is exactly what you and I talked about at the very start of the show when we were talking about Royale Masters format. When you get to that best of 5, how do you start your set? And, you know, Clown doesn't win the game, but does go with arrows and fireball early on. It's almost maybe a blessing that he didn't win this first game because it is such a long set. Losing both of those cards and the barbs early could be trouble, and the tombstone, right? All those kind of have a little bit of overlap. But Rich, I agree, man. When you look at the right-hand side of the screen, and when you talk about exactly what was used, sorry, I'm looking at Royale API, but when you look at what Inthrill used, it is really brilliant. It's really just the Royal Ghost, right? It's the Royal Ghost, and like you said, the Magic Archer, and then obviously the Barbarians because they're one of the best Evos. But other than that, those other 5 cards, really, they don't find a lot of great other positions to be in. So I love that in game number 1 from Inthrill, playing the long game here. And then to go back to Clown, he did lose game number 1. It's honestly, it's not the worst place to be in a best of 5 in this format. You really kind of opened up all of your options to be able to start to pick apart your opponent's defenses. But this second game is the hardest one, right? There's still so much available out there for Inthrill.
Yeah, I mean, second game certainly difficult. It's really going to be a question of what, like, game 3 to me is the swing game in this one overall, right? Obviously, game 3 will potentially decide a winner if we get this next win for Inthrill. But then it also could decide who takes that nice little advantage. Game 2 here, I think that Inthrill probably feels pretty solid, as we talked about with the kind of not very limited deck pool. And this puts a lot of pressure on Clown, because Clown is almost playing a blind game here in game 2, right? How does Clown pick with what he has out? I guess he might try to take advantage of arrows being out and go with something kind of baity that will require fireballs or poisons to be spent here, maybe logs, and looks like it's going to be a minor variation out of Clown into Hog from Inthrill.
Yeah, and you know, talking about what you were mentioning earlier and kind of throughout the day, Rich, is that Evo'd Firecracker. You know, it felt like it was like you would only run Hog Firecracker with Evo'd Knight, but as of recently, that Evo'd Firecracker becomes just as appealing, especially in a dual format, because now you have that Evo'd Knight in a different deck, and you're able to still use a strong deck in the meta with a great evolution.
Yeah, I like this choice a lot. Interesting choice from Clown here. I'm wondering, the Skeleton Dragons here, you know, you're anticipating a big spell out of Inthrill. You're anticipating maybe Fireball or Poison out of Inthrill in this situation. I'm wondering if Clown has something else to draw that fire to spread it around from the Skeleton Dragons.
Yeah, Skeleton Dragon's definitely an interesting choice. I mean, obviously, we know that Magic Archer is used with these cards a lot. Bats used with these cards a lot, especially because bats are not as, you know, prevalent in the meta, even with the Evo. So yeah, just kind of curious what made Clown want to go with Skelly Drags in this particular matchup, as this Hog Rider is just going to live on that tower for another hit, 2 hits. And there you go. Oh, doesn't get that. Wow, okay, all right. 1808, 2798.
The importance of the King Tower activation, right? I mean, that would have been tower down to around 1,000 HP were it not for the King Tower activation. It does it does mitigate the damage. Of course, doesn't erase it.
So set starting off exceptionally well for Inthrill, who picked up game number 1 and now is here in game number 2 with a substantial lead. And nice high spears.
And this'll create some pressure here. The Skeleton Dragons are interesting, right? Because you really are mostly assuming that there's going to be a big spell here. Kind of surprised that no big spell was played, you know, going with the EQ for the Hog Rider variant here out of Inthrill rather than Poison or Fireball. And so you're seeing the Skeleton Dragons get some value there. Maybe they might get more value than Clown had anticipated, but they won't get value as a bait. They're going to get value as more pressure. And that's a great log.
Yeah, that's a really, really great log. That's just a great recognition of knowing what your opponent is going to drop. He's not going to drop the Mighty Miner there. He needs it to tank elsewhere, so you got to go Goblins instead. But Goblins just get logged off the board. Firecracker trying to create some defense here on the right. And, you know, what is really interesting about this, Rich, because of that Earthquake, like you were pointing out, it does feel as this game goes on longer with the recruits and those Skeleton Dragons, you know, Inthrill could find himself in a bit of trouble. 1774 now to 1646. What was a 1,000+ HP lead has now waned in both lanes.
How much can Inthrill find ways to break through? The Earthquake certainly can open up some opportunities for him.
And it's like, when do you hog?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And there we go. Up high to distract. Bomb tower is going to come down immediately, though.
And then just you're EQing out of sequence, right? You're not even worrying about trying to actually break through with the hog in that moment. And this is actually, we're seeing the big feature, right? Is that the recruits and the Skelly Dragons together slow this deck down a lot. You're talking about, you know, you can, I guess, exchange the Skeleton Dragon for the Magic Archer that's normally in this deck, which is 4 for 4. But that recruits versus NATO, that's 4 more elixir you're trying to hold on to. And just as I'm saying that, Clown gets a ton of damage the opposite direction, and the Skeleton Dragons end up getting that final blow.
Well, no, I think it's really good that you were pointing that out, Rich, because I think that 3-card cycle to beat the bomb tower was really kind of what Inthrill was looking to do late game. I just think he maybe recognized it a hair too late, or it's just it doesn't add up the way that you want. We've talked about this a lot. The champions plus the Evos, it should work. Why doesn't it work? Well, I think it's because you really want both of them to be on the board at all times, which means maybe you're not playing other cycle cards as frequently, or maybe you're not getting as much out of them. So you see right there, he recognizes the 3-card cycle to beat the bomb tower come down is what he needs to do, because like you said, Rich, it is so much heavier. We're looking at 0.6 elixir heavier and a full elixir to get all the way back around in a 4-card cycle. And it was one of those things that if you don't recognize that earlier, if you can't really abuse it early on, this deck is going to overwhelm you. And then all the way back to the Skeleton Dragons. EQ's super popular spell out there. Skeleton Dragons completely immune to it, so it just has to be the Firecracker.
So this is where we start getting into the interesting question, right? Because we had a very similar opening sequence in one of our earlier matches, where we saw kind of the same look come out of someone who was running a minor deck that also had the Skeleton Dragons, and the opponent still had Fireball open. So in that previous one, I was saying that I didn't think playing Fireball was a good... This was, I think, the Assaf matchup, where Assaf went to drill Fireball when there were all of the drill counters were still available, and it probably didn't make any sense for his opponent to run a deck that had Fireball bait aspects. But now we're in kind of a different situation, right? Where you have some of the cards that would clog up against a Fireball bait deck, like the Evo Barbs, some counter abilities from Inthrill out, and you only have one Fireball bait aspect with the Skeleton Dragons in here. I think that that Fireball in Game 3 for Inthrill might be a bit of a must in this matchup.
Yeah, and then, you know, you look at the other things that kind of are available because of what Clown just used. You know, the recruits, the poison, the bomb tower, and the log are all out. You know, Graveyard we've seen have a little bit of success today. You know, Evo Knight is still available for Inthrill, for Inthrill. So then maybe you just go to something like Splash Yard and you just try to, you know, pick up a game here with a deck that is very, very strong. You're not changing too much. The bomb tower being gone with the poison and the log make it a little bit tough. That means your opponent has to really be kind of looking to defend against the GY. If they come out with E-Spirit and Bar Barrel, then obviously that kind of sucks. But, you know, that's also a pretty good... I guess, like hitting the lottery if you're trying to go up against just the one deck out there. So I don't know. I like the idea of Inthrill going to Graveyard. I just think that, you know, he's going to be able to control the board a little bit better than he would have just one game ago.
You know what I don't hate is Graveyard Fireball to hedge against Mother Witch in this situation.
Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
You play something that's Fireball baity, so you spread the Fireball out on Clown's side. Well, then, yeah, go Graveyard Fireball, hedge the Mother Witch, and put that pressure on. That would be an interesting choice out of Inthrill here.
Yeah, so as we are sitting here and speculating, that is exactly what the players are doing as we get into game number 3. Like you were talking about, man, this is the swing game. This is where the momentum really shifts. And like I was just mentioning, that game 2 is always really, really tough to win if you won game number 1. Your opponent has every card at their disposal. Now they can pick apart what you can't use. It's like they get a ban and you don't. So Inthrill doing exactly what you have to do when you lose game 1, which is win game 2. And then to your point, Rich, now we're in that swing game, that momentum game here in game 3. All of a sudden, all the pressure is on you. You know, if you do lose this game, you're up against elimination every single time. So here we go. A fun one. Clown was able to come back there and dominate. Inthrill was able to come back there and dominate in game number 1. Did it really, really well with the Magic Archer AQ combo. And then in game number 2, Clown just slow playing it really well.
Yeah, this is interesting because also as we go into this game and beyond, Clown has played a lot more of the central meta decks. We might be in a Goblin Giant matchup here. This is possible.
With an Evoed Cracker.
Yeah.
Okay, nope.
Yep. Mega Knight. Prince is certainly going to be nice here against the Goblin Giant. And you see Inthrill running Fireball. Very different look than the Graveyard Fireball, but he'll like that a lot against the Evo Firecracker.
Definitely. Okay. And a P.E.K.K.A.
And this is going to be, yeah, here we go. Clown running Fireball as well, gets the Mother Witch out, but Inthrill with a lot of answers, and more importantly with the ability to counter that Hog Rider pretty consistently with that mini P.E.K.K.A.
Yeah. Yeah, the mini P.E.K.K.A. going to be there really, really nice. Doesn't have the building, but just might not really need it. You have so much single target DPS here.
Why has this deck suddenly skyrocketed?
Just disappeared?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean, yeah, I know. I don't know. You know, the top of the screen is kind of an obvious one. We've seen this for a minute now. But the bottom of the screen, you know, before today, I hadn't really seen it in competitive much at all recently.
Yeah, I want to find out who's running this, because there's got to be somebody who's been running this a whole bunch and suddenly it's crazy popular. But I don't know who that would be.
All right, Prince going to meet this Goblin Giant. Mini P.E.K.K.A. going to come down, so now Hog Rider can go in here on the right-hand side. Really surprised at the Mini P.E.K.K.A. behind the Goblin Giant there. It feels like it would be a very easy trigger pull for Clown to just go right-hand lane. And that's exactly what we see. 1546 remaining on that tower. Evoed Firecracker still on the board. Mother Witch has no targets on the left-hand side. And maybe just a bit of a miscalculation from Inthrill here, thinking that he could go for a big damage trade.
Yeah, he's got some work to do here, but with all of that out, he's able to stack up a lot here, and the Ghost has to go to work on the Mother Witch high, but now a good little chunk of damage. Down. And yeah, you see that, the Piggy sneaking on through there for some good work, but Inthrill does have to be careful, does not get the Hog. Wow.
Yeah, one Hog shot still comes in, but at least I think Inthrill recognizes if he goes same lane, he can really create problems here. And that's why I love this high MK from Clown, just kind of disrupting a little bit, gets the Goblin Giant up higher, excuse me, and now not able to put together that devastating push that we just saw.
90 seconds left. Lead significant for Clown.
Inthrill just needs one more good Goblin Giant push in that right-hand lane. And, oof, if that MK leapt on top of that Piggy and went down the left-hand side, we could be seeing trouble here. Clown, though, still very much in this and pretty safe, really. You know, that arrow is going to do a good job cleaning up. Mini P.E.K.K.A. was out instead of the, or excuse me, MK was out instead of the Mini P.E.K.K.A. And, should be...
Oh boy, the Mini P.E.K.K.A. gets the most important shot. But now Mini P.E.K.K.A. not available to defend against the Hog, so he has to just take a Hog shot and then get on tower one more time. And
He's
Clown
got a great
has
counter push here.
Wow, this is a lot. This is quite a lot on the board, and there's a pig in front of the Prince. There's a huge
Piggy
pick in
soaks
front
up
of the
the
Prince.
Prince shot. That's massive.
And still just trying to hold on, has to fireball into the middle. 671, 514, 25 seconds left.
That is a game-saving high night there from Inthro, waiting for that Evo'd Firecracker. And now, with this Goblin Giant at the bridge on top of those, you see the mini P.E.K.K.A cycled early. Hog to the center.
Well, I don't know if that's going to be enough. Fireball in, and this Hog might do it. This Hog's going to do it.
Whoa.
Wow, oh no, the arrow's holding on. 7 seconds left. Not enough spell damage, though. And Clown just sneaks the Hog by. The mini P.E.K.K.A aggressive up high, and no way to stop the Hog from connecting. Clown takes the lead 2-1.
Just hover the mini P.E.K.K.A. Just hover it. You don't got to drop it, man. You don't have to play it. Because that mini P.E.K.K.A being played just gives your opponent the out. Now that the mini P.E.K.K.A is not there, everything else is already crossing the bridge. There's only one unit you can drop to do enough damage fast enough to kill that Hog Rider. And, you know, newsflash, those minions' range, they're not big enough to avoid tower damage and the minions. So you look at the value Clown gets from that fireball, cleans up the minions, gets the Hog on top of tower, and a really, really nice come from behind. I mean, it felt like a come from behind win because Inthro, even here, and you look at the numbers, has the matchup. And once he changed lanes and it got the mini P.E.K.K.A down in time for that Hog Rider, it felt like, you know, what is Clown going to do? He can't really go to the left-hand side, but wow, an early mini P.E.K.K.A, and that's all you need.
Yeah, and now I'm going to try to go and figure out what is the story behind this deck, because also that variation does not appear to be played a bunch. So let me go ahead and just put some of these cards into Royale API's deck search, because I am flabbergasted at how it has roared into being the deck of the day.
It really has. It really absolutely has. And Hitchum says the early mini P was the mistake. Should have been more patient. Absolutely. I mean, he had it in hand. He had it ready to go. He had the right idea. I literally did the exact same thing to someone, I think just yesterday with the mini P.E.K.K.A, where they just played it right down the lane. So you just go Hog Rider over the center. You know, it's not usually where you want to drop your Hog, but if their best unit to deal with it is, and then that also because, you know, the Hog's going to come in on the tower with a bit of an angle, you know, where the minions have to be dropped to get all three of them on the Hog for the most amount of time. So really, really well played there by Clown, who after, you know, dropping game number 1 is able to come back to back here in now up 1 as we go into game number 4. Rich, any luck finding why that deck is everywhere now?
I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, there's a version that has Bomber Freeze that's got 450 plays in the last 3 days, but really I'm not seeing a ton of play with it. So this is kind of fascinating. Maybe we need to go and ask some of the pros, yo, what is up with this? Because suddenly Hog MK Prince is a thing suddenly. Why are you even doing this to me? This is craziness.
Yeah, I don't like playing against that deck. I really hate having to deal with all that spam, or excuse me, all that beefiness late game, because I do play bait all the time. And, you know, I think a big part of it is that you need to figure out a way to get through those Evo'd Knights, right? And an MK plus a Prince is really going to do a good job of that. And, you know, I guess if you're going Hog against Hog and you're able to get MKs and Princes on the board, maybe, just maybe, that's your idea, because Hog Rider, Hog EQ is now I believe, the most popular deck used up on the leaderboard, whereas it was Goblin Giant Sparky or Goblin Giant plus Dark Prince and mini P.E.K.K.A for so long. And then it was GY for a little bit, but I think it's now, I think it's Hog EQ again, and this deck does really well against it.
All right, so as we start getting into our last game here, or potentially last game, right? There's potentially 2 more here. Poison arrows and Fireball all out for Clown. It really does open up a lava opportunity for Inthro.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if Clown is going to just go to Bowlerloon Freeze.
And Ram Rider, Tombstone will pull to the middle. Bowler working on the...
Wow.
Whoa! What are we seeing here?
What on earth?
There are a lot of things just happened.
And none of them go together, it feels like.
What? Ram Rider goes from one side to the other. There's a barrel in here. This is like the Ram Rider version of Little Chen? Is there going to be no spell here?
Yeah, I am so curious how this deck kind of unfolds. And then bottom of your screen, you know, Clown is much more in the meta, if you will, Inil doing what really impressed us in the previous set against Mohamed Light? Maybe. I mean, this deck is definitely super weird. And Rich, you're getting closer and closer to, I think, yeah, kind of what you're talking about. A weird version of what was a little Chen deck just with the 2023 facelift.
Yeah, I mean, no spells.
Yeah.
I mean, is there going to be a spell here at the end? Recruits, bats, gang, Dart Goblin, a lot of swarmy stuff here to feed the Skeleton King.
And that Tombstone going to do a good job on this Ram Rider. Nice 3-for-5 trade, always feels good. Plus that E-Giant for the Evoed recruits worked out very, very well.
You know, one of the big wrinkles here is that you don't have the same level of tankage for the Goblin Barrel that you would get out of like the RG, or for a while we saw the RG MK or the RG and skeleton and Giant Skeleton versions. But that era where post 2018 World Finals, we saw in the 2019 CRL season so many variations of that little Chen deck that didn't have Skeleton King yet. There were no heroes yet, no champions. So very different situation. But I'm loving the creativity here out of Inil.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to stack souls is really immense here with so much bait on the board. And, you know, as of right now, it's just about Inil trying to beat this cycle and get around this Bowler plus Barb Barrel combo. And he might be able to do it here on the right-hand side. 3-card cycle, another Ram Rider comes down. Bowler just gets there in time. A perfectly placed Bowler, question mark? No, it's not. Doesn't hit the Dark Goblin, and the Ram Rider gets the tower.
That was big. Dark Goblin gets the Bowler off the board. The Bowler opposite lane will do some of its work here. And Inil should be able to distract the Baby Dragon, but a nice NATO pulls it all together.
Yeah, the damage, though, from those Evoed recruits should be more than enough. There you go. Moderately enough. We'll say 2104 in 1996, but I think just a little bit more elixir spent on the top of the screen than Inil would have liked. I think coming out of that whole situation with a +2 elixir advantage would have been nicer. Only, I think, was it +1 or about a half.
And here's the hard part, is that this deck has this idea, that's one Goblin.
There you go.
Getting
That's
missed
huge.
by the Barb Barrel. Wow. That's a huge miss. And the Barb Barrel being the imperfect counter compared to the Log, which always gets that good width spread.
Exactly.
The challenge was, hey, Barb Barrel, NATO, and Bowler, there's so much to counter these Ram Rider, and look at this.
Very healthy
Look at
E-Giant,
this.
Rich.
Oh boy.
And now he has to fireball. He misses the Bowler. Barb gets in front, and that has to do it, man. I don't understand how you can lose that much elixir and come back. And Clown is gonna do it. 2 out of 3 to Kick Ash. 2 out of 3 to Clown. And he is so far the dominant player in Royale Masters Traditional.
Wow, what a phenomenal performance here, and what a fascinating final game between these two.
Yeah.
Ram Rider Goblin Barrel, no spell, right? The weird take on one of the oldest weird decks in Clash Royale competitive history, and then this E-Giant Bowler deck that ended up just having the pieces, nearly fell apart, nearly gave it away with the missed Barb Barrel there, but able to pressure through, break through, and Inil just didn't have enough after a perfect NATO.
Well, we saw the one fireball at the very end of the game, right? We're wondering, what's that last card? What's that last card? And it makes sense. There's nothing to really fireball on the board. And so we're thinking, yeah, there's no spell. But the problem is that one spell, the one time it came out, it misses half of what it's going for. And, you know, it makes sense why he didn't play it, because there were so much better ways to control the board. I mean, I love seeing decks like this. I love the innovation, but a lot of times you're lacking the synergy. And it felt like that deck, at least in this particular matchup, because of the Bowler NATO, I mean, that's really what it is that Bowler NATO is able to do so much. And then you have your win condition in the E-Giant being one of the better responses to those recruits. So, you know, a really fun deck from Inil, but Clown doing what he does best, apparently, at this time of year, which is just win money at Royale Masters.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw the momentum that Clown built throughout the entire year. He's been good in every competition we cast this year, right? We saw him doing really well in, and this is even going back to last year as well. We've seen him doing really well in the Snapdragon Pro Series, really well here at Royale Masters, really well in Clash Royale. This was a big year for a player who I don't know if he had these kind of expectations, and I'm really hoping that he continues this trend and continues to expect more from himself as we go into 2024, because it seems for me that the trajectory, stock is only going up.
Yeah, I think all of that is so very correct. I think his floor has gone through the roof, and his ceiling, sky's the limit at this point. I mean, he's not only has he impressed me by beating the best in the world in these best of fives, in a very competitive format, in the qualifiers, all that, what he did at CRL, like you're saying. And yeah, I mean, 2024 feels like if there's any, if he takes off the gas, take the foot off the pedal at all, then maybe not. But as of right now, with the way he's playing, I'm excited to see Kickash/Clown at World Finals in 2024. I just can't imagine if he keeps playing like this, how that couldn't happen considering how close he got this year. And yeah, you know, congratulations to him. I really love watching him play, and I really do love, I mean, you look at the decks that he came out with, Rich, you know, he starts it off with the Recruits, Wall Breakers, Skelly Drags, just completely on meta, doesn't work, and then he goes over and tries, or excuse me, that's where he was able to pick up his first win. And then he goes over and he starts busting out the weird decks, right? We're talking about that Mega Knight, Prince, Hog deck, and then finally there at the very end, Bowler, E-Giant? Why not?
Why not? And, you know, Inthro got very creative here as well, but in the end, it's Clown, a.k.a. Kickash, taking the championship here. Let's look at the road he took to win this last qualifier and put a stamp on his qualification for our grand finals here. It started off today for our champion with a very nice win over 2-0 over Friend, 2-0 again over Awesome, and then the 2-0, very clean, 6 wins, no losses through semifinals to take out Reuben, and then the 3-1 win. Only dropping one game on the whole day, 9-1 on the day. What a performance for Clown.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy when you look at how clean it was all the way through, and now you look at the leaderboard, and guess who's on top? Well, it's still Mohamed Light, but Clown is right there in second place because Momo seems to do so well even when he doesn't win. He gets second and third place. So Mohamed Light has gone second, first, and third place here, whereas Clown has gone first and then first again in our third competition. In Thrill, Aaza, aka Nexus, Reuben, Sandbox, and Arden Toas are our top 8. But remember, it's just those top 6, and that's what we were talking about at length today, was that whole Reuben Sandbox situation, and Reuben is able to eke by with just a few percentage and a 1-game win.
And let's take a look at what those guys will be playing for in our playoffs when we get there. Prize pool, because we've had 30K on the line this whole season. It's been $6,000 for each of these qualifying events. It's 10 grand for the finals, with $5,000 as the grand prize. And of course, if you're watching at home right now, we still have our last chance qualifier coming up very, very soon. So if you haven't joined the Discord yet, go ahead, jump on in, because the LCQ, October 21st and 22nd, that will decide the last 2 spots in that top 8. Guaranteed prize money if you make that top 8. So go to discord.gg/RoyaleMasters, MSTRS, to get in on the action. Join the LCQ and maybe be here, not just for that, but more importantly for that grand final.
Yeah, and you know, the LCQ isn't just about getting those top 2 through. You get $2,000 as well. There's $2,000 up for grabs there. It's not just about the points, or, well, I guess the qualifying. It is also about the cash. 10K for the finals, like you just saw, and a handful more events here for Royale Masters to close out our year. As you said, Rich, we have something even after World Finals, which is always super fun, because I know that we start to kind of miss Clash Royale in the off season. So big shout out to Royale Masters for making sure that we still have a lot more to watch as the year comes to a close. Rich, we did it. We're already through qualifiers. We're almost done with Royale Masters Traditional. I'm a little sad, but mostly happy that we've got the gameplay we've seen.
But we have so much more left. We have the LCQ coming up on the 21st, 22nd. Then we have one more King of the Hill on October 24th and 25th. So next week, a lot of Clash Royale to be played. Then don't forget, end of this month, the playoffs for this event will be happening, so that's going to be a whole lot of fun. And then our King of Kings event, more on that later in December. So plenty more. We're near the end of the last quarter of the year, but there's so much more Clash Royale left, Andrew.
Oh, and just a quick bump there. King of the Hill is this week. They're moving it up.
Oh, this week?
I think I remember them saying that. Yeah, so King of the Hill this week should be on a Wednesday. Usually is. So make sure you guys are following along with all things Royale Masters. You can go and win money whenever you'd like. It'll be on the 18th of October. For all of you just wondering exactly the date, there you go.
That's it for us today. Thanks for hanging out with us, whether you watched on Twitch, whether you watched on YouTube, whether you're just watching in your mind using your psychic powers and didn't even tune in anywhere. Hey, first of all, use that to use. Secondly, thanks for being here. For Andrew Guy, for everyone in the booth, I'm Rich Slayton. We'll see you back here next time, very soon, for more Royale Masters.